Chapter 1029. If something had happened that night, when Song Jiwon was drunk, it would have been easier to deal with. However, nothing happened in the end. After Song Jiwon woke up, he was still rude to Chun Anlin. However, Chun Anlin was still as hot-tempered as before. He was provoked by Song Jiwon and rolled up his sleeves, ready to fight. Poplar Fruit didn't know what to do either. A week passed, and it was the weekend again. Chun Anlin was finally leaving Yangcheng. Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei, and Kiki were all present. Fong Beibei even helped to pack the luggage. Kiki looked reluctant to leave. Sister Anlin, in the future, don't forget Kiki. If you have the chance, you have to visit Kiki. Bring back Kiki delicious food. Kiki hugged Chun Anlin's leg and pouted. Hey, why you make it sound like you're going to be parted forever? What year is it now? Can't we call and even video chat? Song Jiwon yawned as he shook his legs on the sofa. He was bored to death. His words were a bit of killjoy. Even Poplar Fruit slapped him and said, If you're not going to help, then don't cause trouble here. Brother Mosquito, come and help to pack. It looks like there's a lot of luggage. Fong Beibei called out. Asking Song Jiwon to help was a lie. She wanted him to show off in front of Chun Anlin. However, Song Jiwon was going to be lazy to the end today. Not only did he not help, he was also slacking off. Now, he was simply lying on the sofa. No need to pack, it's too messy. Chun Anlin glanced at him and said, He can't pass the security check with so many things on the plane. Keep it. If he doesn't want it, then give it to the next renter. This house was originally rented by Poplar Fruit. Later, he gave it to Chun Anlin, and Chun Anlin renewed the lease for another year. Now that Chun Anlin had left, he had already listed the house as a sublet. The next tenant had already signed the contract and was waiting to move back in at the beginning of September. Looking at the gradually empty house, Fong Beibei inexplicably felt melancholy. Back then, when she first came to Poplar Fruit's house to play, she came here, holding hands with Yanghua. She held Yangua's hand tightly. Poplar Fruit turned to look at her and reached out his other hand to hug her. Aya, flaunting your love as if there's no one around. You're really shameless. Song Jiwon jumped up from the sofa, looked at his phone, and said, I'm going to take a call. After that, he went out. Chun Anlin looked at his back with a lonely expression. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? Over the past year, although the two of them had quarreled often, in fact, it was also because of their quarreling that they had a deeper impression of each other. Song Jiwon might be lazy today, but that was because he didn't know what was wrong with him. In the past, Song Jiwon was only good at talking. When it was time for him to take action, he would never deliberately avoid it. Just like Wanlan Martial Arts Club, Chun Anlin always felt that without Song Jiwon, he wouldn't be able to succeed. Even Poplar Fruit, who played the role of image ambassador in publicity, was not as important as Song Jiwon. Fong Beibei saw Chun Anlin's expression. When Song Jiwon returned, she stood up and questioned Song Jiwon. Brother Mosquito. Song Jiwon looked at her in confusion. Fong Beibei said angrily, Sister-in-law is about to leave. Don't you have anything to say to her? Fong Beibei's words stunned everyone. Kiki hesitated for a moment, then raised her hand and said, Kiki has something to say to sister-in-law. No, you have nothing to say. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He picked up Kiki, covered her little mouth, and whispered in her ear, Don't disturb sister-in-law now. Without the little troublemaker Kiki, the atmosphere froze again. Chun Anlin was also stunned. He stared at Song Jiwon. Song Jiwon suddenly said with certainty, Yes, of course. Then go and say it. Be brave. Fong Beibei pushed him. Even a gentle girl like Fong Beibei couldn't stand it anymore. Okay, I'll say it. Song Jiwon stood in front of Chun Anlin, whose face was slightly red, and smiled. Ahem, it's like this. Song Jiwon didn't dare to look at Chun Anlin's glasses. He said, Just now, the leader called and asked me to go back and work overtime. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one knew that Song Jiwon was going to say this. Song Jiwon didn't have any intention of stopping. He continued to speak frankly, without a trace of shame on his face. It's like this. I'm going out in a while, so I don't have time to send you. Isn't Laogwa here? His car is big enough to send you to the plane. Why don't you take Laogwa's car? Chun Amlin stared straight at him, as if he was about to explode in anger. Fong Bei quickly ran over and grabbed Chun Amlin's arm. If it was in the past, Song Jiwen would add fuel to the fire and wouldn't stop until he provoked Chun Amlin's anger. But today, he didn't seem to be in the mood. He laughed dryly and said, "Sorry, it's fine. The next time you come to Yangcheng, I'll treat you to a meal as an apology. Now, I'm going to go back and prepare. I'm going to work overtime." Song Jiwen turned around casually, as if the girl he was talking to was just an ordinary friend. Even if he didn't send her off, it didn't matter at all. Poplar Fruit gave Fong Bei a look and quickly opened the door to chase after him. "Hey, Mosquito, what are you doing?" Poplar Fruit asked unhappily. To be honest, Song Jiwen's performance today was really too disappointing. "I didn't do anything. Didn't I say I'm going to work overtime?" Song Jiwen still said with a smile. It was as if the sadness he felt when he was drinking that night never happened. "You're lying to us, right? Since when did you go to work overtime on the weekend? Aren't you a civil servant?" Poplar Fruit said speechlessly. "What's the benefit of lying to you?" Song Jiwen said with a smile that was not a smile. "Why don't I show you my phone? My boss, Chief Lee, just called me. Can't you reject it? There are so many people, and you're the only one missing. Can't you let someone else replace you?" Poplar Fruit asked unhappily. "Yes, but the leader will make things difficult for me." Song Jiwen patted Poplar Fruit and said, "Okay, don't worry about me. It's not like we're going to be separated forever. Today she went back, but will she not come to Yangcheng to play in the future? Don't always think about love." "But she's Chun Amlin," Poplar Fruit shouted. Song Jiwen paused, and then smiled without turning his head. "I know." After that, he opened the door, went in, and closed the door, leaving only the sound of his voice floating in the corridor. Chapter 10:30. After being stunned for a while, Poplar Fruit returned to the house opposite. He saw Chun Amlin staring at the luggage on the ground. Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Bei with a questioning look. Fong Bei waved her hand and sighed. Kiki didn't say much. She blinked her big eyes and stood on the sofa next to her. She looked at her parents for a while and then looked at sister and Lon for a while. "Let's go." After Chun Amlin came back to her senses, she said to Poplar Fruit, "Brother Yang, let's go to the airport." "So early? There's still 3 hours." Poplar Fruit asked in surprise, "Don't you want to stay a little longer?" Chun Amlin smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. Let's leave early so that there won't be a traffic jam later." Poplar Fruit had no choice but to help carry the luggage downstairs. Before going downstairs, Poplar Fruit knocked on Song Jiwen's door and shouted, "Mosquito, we're going to the airport." However, Song Jiwen's room didn't respond at all. Poplar Fruit shook his head and opened his hands to everyone. "Let's go." When they reached the place where Poplar Fruit parked downstairs, Chun Amlin suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei both looked over in confusion. Chun Amlin hesitated for a while, then took out a bunch of keys from her right pocket and handed it to Poplar Fruit. "This is a spare key. Brother Yang, help me give it to him later." Chun Amlin looked at the bunch of keys with some loneliness in her eyes. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei looked at each other. In the end, Poplar Fruit took the keys, opened the door, and let them get in. Poplar Fruit drove slowly out of the neighborhood so that Chun Amlin could take another look at the place where she had lived for almost a year. And Song Jiwen did not appear from beginning to end. In the car, Fong Bei tried to comfort Chun Amlin, who looked gloomy. Chun Amlin smiled and said, "Bei, I'm fine. Don't worry." After hesitating for a while, Poplar Fruit said, "Unlon, Song Jiwen isn't usually like this." "I know," Chun Amlin answered without hesitation. However, Poplar Fruit really wanted to save Song Jiwen's impression of him. As he drove, he said, "You may not know this, but that day he drank and cried in my car. He's definitely not a heartless person." Poplar Fruit said, "What we saw today, he was too abnormal. I suspect that he didn't want to face it." Chun Amlin was silent for a while, then said, "I know. In the past, he was a little. He didn't care much about his feelings. But when you met him, he had already changed. He didn't go out to play all night for a whole year. Poplar Fruit continued. Also, I think that he really has feelings for you. Do you know? He never asked me out to drink because of feelings in the past. The more Yongwa spoke, the more energetic she became. The more Chun Amlin listened, the more silent he became. In the past, he wasn't such a timid person. Really. When he meets a girl he likes, he will take the initiative to confess, but only you. He has been suppressing his feelings, afraid that his immaturity will hurt you. Poplar Fruit said with a sigh. Fong Bei also persuaded her. Yes, sister-in-law, don't be fooled by Brother Mosquito's appearance today. Maybe he is deliberately making you angry, and he still doesn't want you to leave. Since Chun Amlin was about to leave, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei simply let go of the matter. Otherwise, there would be no chance in the future. Then why didn't he tell me personally? Chun Amlin's eyes were a little red as she suddenly asked. Poplar Fruit was silent for a while, then said, he said that he didn't want to delay your future. Chun Amlin turned her head and did not make a sound for a long time. There's no other way. Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. In front of them was the inner-city highway overpass. As long as they got on the highway, it would take less than 20 minutes to reach the airport. At this moment, Yongwa didn't have any desires. She just held onto the steering wheel with some regret. Kiki, on the other hand, was in the car looking at sister-in-law who had turned her head to look at the scenery. No one knew what her little head was thinking. Wait a minute, Brother Yong. Wait a minute. Chun Amlin's firm voice suddenly came from behind. Poplar Fruit immediately turned on the turn signal and slowed down to the side of the road. He turned back to look at Chun Amlin in surprise and asked, sister-in-law, did something drop? Big Brother Yong. Chun Amlin took a deep breath and said firmly, can I trouble you to turn around and go back? I have a question that I want to ask him. What are you waiting for? Fong Bei, on the other hand, was a little happy. She patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said angrily, hurry up and drive. Oh. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood and quickly turned the car around. Chi-Chi seemed to have realized something and started giggling as well. On the way back, Poplar Fruit drove a little faster, as if he was afraid that Song Jiwin would have already gone to work if he went back late. However, before he reached the ground floor of the neighborhood, Poplar Fruit had already seen Song Jiwin squatting on the curb of the roadside in a somewhat dispirited manner. He did not know if he was counting ants or doing something else, but his head was lowered. Chun Amlin did not wait for the car to stop and couldn't wait to open the door and jump out. Then, he aggressively walked towards Song Jiwin. As he walked, he threw the hat on his head to the side, looking like a gangster about to fight. Song Jiwin, of course, heard the sound. When he looked up and saw Chun Amlin, he quickly stepped back. This is going to work, right? Chun Amlin glanced at the slippers on Song Jiwin's feet and asked with a sharp gaze. Yes. Song Jiwin gave a hollow laugh. Going to work? Then why were you squatting on the ground? Chun Amlin stared into Song Jiwin's eyes, leaving him with no way to escape. It's my shoelaces. My shoelaces are loose. Song Jiwin braced himself. Shoelaces? Where did your shoelaces come from? Chun Amlin took a step forward and pressed Song Jiwin's head down. She pointed at his slippers and asked, Hey, loud boys here. Can you give me some face? Song Jiwin shouted in resistance. We won't look. You guys can do whatever you want. Poplar Fruit quickly called Fong Bei and Kiki back to the car. However, they all shrank to the back of the car and peeked through the window. Song Jiwin. Chun Amlin let go of her hand, but she still stared at him. She took a deep breath and her eyes began to redden. What? Song Jiwin did not dare to look into Chun Amlin's eyes. His eyes were wandering and he asked in a loud voice, Can't you be a little more like a man? Chun Amlin shouted loudly. She was afraid that Song Jiwin, who was standing in front of her, could not hear her. Don't be shy like a girl. Do you like me or not? Just tell me directly. Song Jiwin was stunned. He stared blankly at the hysterical Chun Amlin. It was as if he was stunned by her lion's roar. If you don't like me, don't make me think about you. Once I leave, everything will be over. Chun Amlin's small body could explode with so much energy. Even Poplar Fruit, who was in the car far away, could hear her voice clearly. You won't say yes? Okay, I got it. Song Ji-wen was in a daze. It was as hateful as his indifferent attitude today. Chun Amlin was a little disappointed. She blinked her eyes hard, stomped her foot, turned around, and left. Chapter 10:31. Pa. As Chun Amlin turned to leave, her hand was caught by Song Ji-wen. He didn't give Chun Amlin time to think. He pulled Chun Amlin's arm forcefully and pulled her back into his embrace. Then, Song Ji-wen lowered his head and kissed her. Compared to the petite Chun Amlin, Song Ji-wen was indeed a little taller. But could anyone imagine the usually violent Chun Amlin being hugged by Song Ji-wen like a little bird? Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei saw it. Moreover, before Chun Amlin could move, she was kissed by Song Ji-wen. This kiss was so forceful and affectionate. At that moment, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei seemed to see eternity. They were so touched that they even forgot to cover Kiki's curious gaze. Was it really eternity? Of course not. With an ah sound, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei both took a deep breath. Poplar Fruit quickly covered Kiki's head in his arms, afraid that Kiki would see this bloody and violent scene. When they turned around, Song Ji-wen was already pressed to the ground by Chun Amlin with a solid shoulder throw. Ouch, ouch, it hurts. Song Ji-wen's face was tightly pressed against the dusty ground. On the other side, Chun Amlin's palm was pressing down. He didn't even have time to react before he was taken down by Chun Amlin. He had to admit that Chun Amlin's kung fu was pretty good. You've got guts, haven't you? How dare you take advantage of me? Chun Amlin scolded fiercely. Indeed, Song Ji-wen was provoked by Fong Beibei's confession, which made him do such an out-of-line action. Don't forget, it was always Chun Amlin who bullied Song Ji-wen. When did Song Ji-wen have the ability to kiss Chun Amlin? I just can't control myself, can I? Song Ji-wen complained with a sullen face. Chun Amlin snorted and let go of her hand. She stood up and frowned at Song Ji-wen, saying, I'm starting to regret it. Why? Song Ji-wen hurriedly got up from the ground and asked. Chun Amlin wiped her still red lips. Her eyes flashed with a hint of shyness, and said, How can you act so recklessly? You didn't talk nicely, you just have to get physical, right? Also, your movements are so skillful. Have you used it on many women before? Chun Amlin wasn't so easily subdued by Song Ji-wen. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei, who were in the car, were stunned. This was like a TV series with twists and turns, making it impossible for people to guess what would happen next. Song Ji-wen smiled bitterly and quibbled. When have I used it on many women? If the first pull and hug were to be said, Song Ji-wen could swear to God that this was his first time. Well, just the first two actions were enough. Hee, do you think I'll believe you? Chun Amlin said sarcastically, looking at him with disdain. Song Ji-wen was also beginning to be unconvinced. He said, Then what do you want? That depends on what you want. Chun Amlin didn't shrink back. She raised her head and looked straight at him. The two of them were like guessing riddles, talking in a language that no one could understand. I don't want to do anything. Song Ji-wen paused and said, I just don't want you to leave. Why? Chun Amlin still raised her head like a proud little rooster. Based on the fact that you like me, and then I like you too. Song Ji-wen didn't beat around the bush and said straightforwardly, Uft. Chun Amlin couldn't help but laugh. She pushed Song Ji-wen away a little and said, You're so shameless. When did I say that I like you? Do you even need to say it? Song Ji-wen imitated Chun Amlin's northeastern dialect and said, It's written all over your face. Go to hell. Chun Amlin's face was red. She wanted to pounce on Song Ji-wen and chase after him, but Song Ji-wen had already dodged with a smile. Stop right there. Chun Amlin grabbed the hem of Song Ji-wen's clothes and hit him again. Tell me, do you still dare to lie to me and say that you don't want to see me off when you work overtime? Chun Amlin grabbed Song Ji-wen's collar and asked in a threatening manner. Song Ji-wen was pulled closer. Looking at Chun Amlin's face, he didn't have any fear at this moment. Instead, there was a kind of appreciation or joy in his eyes. He shook his head with a smile and didn't quibble. Chun Amlin was a little shy. she still couldn't accept Song Jiwen's fiery eyes. She pushed Song Jiwen away again. Chun Amlin pretended to look at her watch and said, "Well, I should go. Are you going to see me off?" Song Jiwen couldn't stay calm anymore. He asked in surprise, "What did you say? Why are you leaving? Didn't you say that you're not going?" Chun Amlin hesitated for a moment. She looked at Song Jiwen seriously and said, "I still have to go back. I need to explain what I'm going to do. It won't be too long. Maybe half a year. I'll be back in half a year." "Half a year? That long?" Song Jiwen scratched his head in distress. However, Chun Amlin looked at him firmly and didn't have any intention of changing her mind. In fact, she had sacrificed enough, hadn't she? She might have to put down her ambitions for Song Jiwen. She might have to give up the new operation experience that she had painstakingly accumulated for nothing. It was only half a year. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Song Jiwen's eyes flashed with gentleness as he said softly, "Don't make promises that are too perfect." Chun Amlin took a deep breath, bit her lower lip, and said, "If you can't wait, then don't. I might not come back anyway." "No, I'll wait for you. If you don't come back, I'll go get you," Song Jiwen said domineeringly as he waved his hand. "You?" Chun Amlin said with some disdain. "You can't even beat me. I have a fighter. I'll bring Lao Guo to get you. Even if we have to fight the 18 bronze men formation, we'll get you back," Song Jiwen said confidently. "What are they talking about?" Fong Beibei couldn't hear clearly. She and Kiki both looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit spread out his hands and said innocently, I don't know how to read lips." They guessed that Song Jiwen had already brought Chun Amlin back. He waved at Poplar Fruit and shouted, "Lao Guo, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and get ready to drive. If you don't hurry up, you might not be able to catch the plane." In the end, Chun Amlin still left, leaving Song Jiwen, who took her first kiss, alone in Yangcheng. Oh no, she also left her luggage behind. She left empty-handed. In her words, she might come back. Why did she bring so many things? In the end, these things were brought back to Song Jiwen's apartment for safekeeping. What? In the future, will Chun Amlin still come back? What a joke. Is this still a problem? Chun Amlin's apartment has already been rented out. Where will she stay when she comes back? Brother, this won't be a problem. Chapter 1032. Before Higashiyama University reopened, Poplar Fruit made a trip to Liang City. Fong Beibei and Kiki didn't follow along. However, the lineup was still huge. Or rather, it should be said that it was luxurious. Such a huge lineup was all for the sake of testing the results of the remote teaching that Fat Dragon and Kai Simin had spent over a month to set up. Naturally, the reason why they were able to complete the project so quickly was definitely not solely due to the efforts of Fat Dragon and Kai Simin. They were already employees of the company and were mainly busy with the construction of the software. In reality, the ones who were busy going up and down the mountain to assemble the hardware were the volunteers from the dozens of villages from the previous project. After going through experience and training, they were recruited into Kai Simin's computer company as maintenance staff stationed in Liang City. This time, they were even more passionate as they participated in this huge project. Another reason was the support of Liang City's Chun Longjiang. He had gathered all the computer teachers and physical education teachers in the city to provide manpower support. He had also ensured that the funds and infrastructure would be quickly implemented. It could be said that for the entire month of August, the entire city of Liang City was in full swing. The only difference was that the focus was placed on the mountainous areas that no one would normally pay attention to. You've done a good deed. However, Poplar Fruit didn't complain because of this. On one hand, the money he was burning wasn't from his charity fund, nor was it a special fund allocated for the children's education. On the other hand, this show had also given the remote teaching a lot of positive effects. At the very least, this was the headline news of the provincial television station. On the second day, this news was actually edited and broadcast on the central television station. It was a bit like becoming world famous overnight. Poplar Fruit and the New Dimensions remote teaching were lucky enough to show their faces on the news broadcast. Immediately after, they were welcomed by the domestic media. There was no need to talk about the Guangdong province. Some of the government's mouthpieces had already prepared headlines for Poplar Fruit. When Poplar Fruit returned to Yang City, a reporter from the People's Daily was already waiting in the school's principal's office, waiting for an exclusive interview with him. Although it wasn't a headline, the new issue of People's Daily had actually used an entire page to report on Poplar Fruit and A New Dimension's remote teaching. The reporter from People's Daily was very emotional. He quoted from Poplar Fruit's book Longing for the Dawn. Because I had to rush to attend the translation conference, I had to go down the mountain. However, during the week of the meeting in Great City, every time I closed my eyes, I seemed to see the children's dark faces and bright eyes. They were the most innocent, curious, and sincere eyes in the world. They were also the most ignorant, and empty eyes. Similarly, the People's Daily was accompanied by a picture of a meow girl with large eyes filled with longing. Because of this concern, Poplar Fruit returned to the mountain and thought about the way out of the mountain education. He wants to use modern scientific information technology to break the long-standing, unequal distribution of education resources that has affected our country for a long time. A computer and a network cable have become the key to connecting us to the world. In the hands of Poplar Fruit, they have become the key to the poor mountain children to see the world outside of the mountain. They have become the bridge for them to obtain knowledge and enter the world. You can't see the hard work, sweat, and effort of Poplar Fruit and his colleagues, but you should see that because of their hard work, sweat, and effort, in just 1 year, the children in the poor mountain areas of Lidong County have undergone amazing changes. And this change will also happen to the children in the poor mountain areas of Liyang City. The rest of the report didn't have much to do with Yanghua. The rest of the page was analyzing the feasibility of the new education model of remote teaching. After all, this was People's Daily, which was famous for its macro perspective. However, Tung Sun News, which had been reporting on Poplar Fruit carefully, not only sent people to interview Poplar Fruit, but also sent people to Lidong County to take the most realistic photos and make them into graphic news. The theme of their report was more interesting. A genius model's magnificent turnaround. They were more inclined to report the story behind Poplar Fruit's transformation from a world-famous model to a philanthropist. They wanted to know his inner story from Poplar Fruit. It was his girlfriend who insisted on volunteering at the stray dog rescue station, who brought him positive energy and gave him the idea of doing a charity that could help others. Since the establishment of the charity fund, you can see that Poplar Fruit has donated nearly 90 million yuan through the transparent financial details on the website. I discussed it with my girlfriend. She is very supportive of me doing this. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. At the beginning of the year, some people questioned the source of Poplar Fruit's funding. Now, the editor has obtained a piece of data from Poplar Fruit's boss. It is a sales record of the works translated by Poplar Fruit. From this data, we can see that the reason why Poplar Fruit can earn so much money is entirely due to his own excellent talent. He has translated works that are popular abroad. The exposure of this data was bound to cause an uproar. Many people would discuss and argue about the data, and some smart people even saw the business opportunity of translating books. However, the focus of Tung Sun's news was obviously not on this. However, compared to Poplar Fruit's net worth, he donated more than 80% of his income to help others. This ratio is extremely rare in the world's rich circle. This spirit is worth learning from. For a time, the media's pursuit praised Poplar Fruit to the sky. However, Poplar Fruit had been very calm. He was a little worried. He was worried that the higher he was praised, the worse he would fall. Chapter 1033. Putting aside 10-cent news for the time being, this series of official reports caused a huge sensation in the country, mainly in the education field. Of course, most of them were discussions. Some agreed, some had reservations, and some had doubts. There were even some who were worried and doubtful. This education model is immature and undesirable. How can there be an education model where teachers and students can't meet face to face? It's really nonsense. Naturally, many old people shouted that they wanted to defend healthy, traditional education. In this regard, netizens sneered and said, "If you can do it, then do it. If you can't do it, then don't talk nonsense." Of course, no one dared to do it. These old teachers who only knew how to talk nonsense were actually hypocrites who cherished their own lives. How could they be willing to go to the mountains to eat and sleep in the open? How could they be willing to use their white flesh to feed the mosquitoes in the hot and humid environment of the mountains? Naturally, there were also reporters who found Poplar Fruit to ask for his opinion. Poplar Fruit smiled helplessly and said, "After all, remote teaching is just a helpless move. If it can be like traditional education, with teachers on the mountains to guide and follow up the children's learning anytime and anywhere, that would be the best choice. But reality doesn't allow us to be willful." Poplar Fruit's response didn't get any effect. Some of the old teachers in the traditional education field who stubbornly attacked him still wouldn't give up. On the contrary, netizens were overjoyed. "Don't allow us to be willful." This somewhat witty phrase became a hot word on the internet in September. Soon, there were netizens who made a cartoon. Poplar Fruit pointed to the old men who were the size of babies and said, "Okay, don't be willful, be good." Poplar Fruit was almost broken by them. Unwilling to quarrel with those old teachers, Poplar Fruit began to stop accepting media interviews. However, he was very sincere and objective in listing his summary of the advantages and disadvantages of remote teaching on Weibo. There were still many disadvantages, such as long-term exposure to computer radiation and the weak restraint of the teachers in the classroom. It required the cooperation of the school administrators who acted as villagers to manage it. One of the shortcomings was the lack of close communication and the lack of concern in life and thoughts. This was in line with what the traditional teachers had pointed out. However, Yang Guozhen expressed her opinion on this issue. On one hand, the remote teaching system was still being perfected. In the future, there would definitely be more psychology teachers to communicate with the children regularly and provide them with the correct spiritual guidance to cultivate their correct outlook on life and values. In fact, Poplar Fruit had done this to the children of Xiong village before. It was just like how he would tell the children stories and reason with them. However, it was not popularized yet. On the other hand, Poplar Fruit chose to believe in the children's autonomy and self-control. Please don't underestimate the efforts of a child with dreams. Although they live in poverty and are malnourished, they are stronger and more independent than the children in the city. The children in the mountains were not as delicate as the children in the city. If they fell, their parents would cry. If the teachers scolded them, they would cry and go to their parents. They lived in a difficult environment since they were young. Even their parents were not by their side. They either died early or went to work in the city. Some children even took on the responsibility of taking care of their younger siblings. They just lacked the resources and environment for fair competition. As long as they were given hope and a chance, they would work 100 or 1,000 times harder than the children in the city. For this reason, Poplar Fruit wrote a new article on Weibo to state his understanding of the poverty in the poor mountainous areas over the past year. In some areas, the state actually provides a lot of support, but after decades of support, they still can't get up. This is partly due to the corruption of the local officials, but more importantly, the poverty is dragged down by the backwardness. Because of the region and transportation, the Miao people living deep in the mountains lack knowledge of the outside world. A child told me that his impression of the world was constructed by his father, who went to work in the city. His father, who was also uneducated, spent little time together and did not speak in detail. His understanding was still very vague. He only felt that the outside world was very big and rich, but it was full of deceit and oppression. It is precisely because of ignorance that many Miao people are entrenched in the mountains. They reject modern civilization and do not want to make progress. It is also because of poverty that many children live in an environment without the company of their parents. They lack the love of a family, the enlightenment of education, and the support of nutrition. When they grow up, they can only live in the poverty and backwardness of their parents. I admire those volunteers who have been teaching in these areas for a long time. because they have sacrificed themselves to bring modern civilization to the children in these areas. They have brought hope and light to the future. But this does not solve all the problems. After all, the territory of China is too vast. The children who need help are widely distributed, and there are tens of millions of them. Our volunteers are limited. Planning for remote teaching is to break the limitations of space and distance, reduce the sacrifices that volunteers need to make, and let more caring people participate so that more children in the poor mountainous areas can benefit from it. I'm very happy to be able to see the implementation of remote teaching. The scope of benefits has also expanded from Xiong Village to the entire mountainous area of Liang City. We will continue to work hard and focus on the quality of teaching. We will add more interest courses outside of the classroom so that children can grow up healthily and comprehensively. At the same time, Poplar Fruit also appealed to the outside world to reduce complaints and malicious speculations, and to provide more suggestions and supervision. Remote teaching was not Poplar Fruits alone. The charity fund was also not decided by Poplar Fruit. All the data was listed transparently on the internet for people to review. Poplar Fruit believed that more talented people joining and doing a better job of remote teaching was not adding any glory or honor to him. It was actually a blessing for the children in the mountainous areas. Poplar Fruit's article was published, and the in-depth analysis in it quickly received many praises. Many online media reprinted Poplar Fruit's article, praising Poplar Fruit's attitude of doing public welfare. Subsequently, after the reopening of the new school year, the headquarters of the New Dimensions teaching volunteers voted to make all the teaching resources available to the public and shared. Although it was only a teaching video for primary school students recorded by university volunteers, the main teaching content, it was, after all, a compilation and recording of the best talents from various universities in Guangdong Province. In terms of quality, it received the praise of many people in the education industry. In particular, Bishop Poplar Fruit's English lessons, the standard of pronunciation, the content, and the rhythm were praised by the Guangdong Province's Education Department as the height of the new national standard. The national standard here was, of course, not the abbreviation of a national standard often used in variety shows. It was the real national standard. This made many teachers who had strange pronunciation feel ashamed. What qualifications did they have to criticize Poplar Fruit and remote teaching? Chapter 1034. If you woke up one day and found that people all over the world were talking about the same thing and playing the same game on their phones, don't be surprised. This was the Internet Plus effect created by the combination of the mobile internet and social media software. That's right, we're talking about Flappy Bird. Back in Guangzhou, he resumed his normal life of attending classes and doing research projects. One morning, Poplar Fruit drove Fong Bei to school and found that everyone was talking about the game. Of course, Flappy Bird's popularity after the free game was only a narrow Internet Plus effect. Fat Dragon's team might have secretly promoted it, but the viral spread later on was not their doing. It was the difficulty of the game that drove everyone crazy. When you posted a result of 4 points to your circle of friends and felt smug about it, someone soon refreshed your understanding with a result of 6 points. You had no choice but to fight back and work hard to get 8 or 10 points to prove yourself. As for those who scored 20 or 30 points, they were practically worshipped by their friends one after another. Screenshots of their results were even crazily shared in their circle of friends. Flappy_Bird had become popular, but it wasn't until now. At the end of August, Flappy Bird was already popular in Europe and America. First, it was slowly discovered on social media. More and more people tried to challenge the game that was known as the most difficult game in history. Some were defeated, while others were praised by their friends. This was the same model that was popular in China. However, gradually, the trend spread from the ordinary people to the more influential celebrities. Many celebrities and athletes showed off their results on Twitter. Some of them were good at the game, and some even scored 300 points. There were also some who were more amusing and deliberately showed off their pitiful results. Then, they pretended to be fragile and cried. Not only did such behavior not lose fans, but also gave people a feeling of down-to-earth and made them more liked by fans. Poplar Fruit was not clear about the situation abroad, but in China, Flappy Bird was ranked first in the number of downloads in the domestic iOS software market in the first week of September. After Fat Dragon returned from Lyon, he couldn't stop smiling because their company's phone was blowing up. Many advertisers waved their cash and wanted to throw money at them. Some veteran manufacturers even tried to acquire the game, but Fat Dragon rejected them all in a domineering manner. Now that they were not short of money, it would be meaningless to sell their hard work. For Fat Dragon and the group of lonely hackers, creating a game to make the whole world confused was more important than making money. When Fat Dragon first introduced the game to Poplar Fruit, Kiki played it very enthusiastically until one day Poplar Fruit found that the little girl secretly took his phone to play and hid in a dark room. That made Poplar Fruit angry. Poplar Fruit was worried about Kiki's health, so he decided to strictly control the time she touched the phone. However, it took Poplar Fruit a lot of effort to make Kiki let go of the pixel bird quietly. If Papa can play to the last level, Kiki will stop playing. After learning from Uncle Fat Dragon that this small game could be cleared, Kiki had been eager to play it, so she made such a proposal to her father. Kiki's best score was more than 270 points. This already made Poplar Fruit very surprised. How long would it take to clear the game? Okay, Papa promises you. For his daughter, Poplar Fruit was ready to risk everything. Pinky promise, I mean it. Kiki pouted and asked her father to make a promise. If I can't do it, I'm a puppy. Poplar Fruit smiled and made a pinky promise with her. Then he kicked the puppy gold away and played on the sofa. Kiki laughed at Poplar Fruit for a long time because of his 0 points. But was he really so bad? How could it be? Poplar Fruit's ability to play games was better than anyone else's, and Kiki inherited it from her father. Poplar Fruit, who had strong body control, quickly became proficient in this game, and his score was getting better and better. From the first dozens of points to the last hundreds of points, Poplar Fruit easily broke Kiki's record. How many points did your Uncle Fat Dragon say the last level is? Don't play until Papa's phone runs out of battery, and we still haven't cleared the game. Poplar Fruit played while chatting with Kiki. Just now he got 563 points, but he wiped his sweat and died. This time, he decided to play with both hands. When his left hand was tired, he would switch to his right hand, and when his right hand was tired, he would switch to his left hand. However, he couldn't play endlessly like this, right? There had to be something to look forward to, right? Kiki doesn't know. The little girl slyly shook her head and refused to tell her father. She definitely knew Fat Dragon would tell her everything. That guy had always been looking forward to having a child, and the thing he couldn't stand the most was Kiki acting spoiled to him. Poplar Fruit glanced at Kiki's somewhat dignified expression, and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. He understood. The last level must not be too far away, otherwise Kiki wouldn't be so nervous. Therefore, Poplar Fruit played left and right, and played and played. When he played to the 900th point, the environment on the screen suddenly changed. Fuck, these green cement pipes can actually move. The designer, Ruan Donga, must have done it on purpose, not following the rules. Not only did the cement pipes move, they were also arranged in a strange pattern. Poplar Fruit accidentally bumped into a cement pipe that suddenly moved diagonally and died. I don't believe I can't handle you. Poplar Fruit played from morning to afternoon, except for making lunch for Kiki in the middle. Kiki had already fallen asleep on the sofa. The first 900 points were relatively easy, but for the next 100 points, the difficulty increased with every 10 points. In the end, there was a big monster that could spit fire along with the bird's flight path. But Poplar Fruit still cleared the level before Fong Bebe came back. Yes, tears were streaming down his face. He could actually clear the level of this game. However, after clearing the level, the boring and monotonous ending screen disappointed Kiki. Kiki thought there would be something very, very interesting at the end. This also cut off Kiki's interest in continuing to play. However, there was a small episode. After Fat Dragon heard Kiki's complaint on the phone, he expressed that he didn't believe that Poplar Fruit had really cleared the level. Therefore, in order to prove himself, forced by Kiki and Fong Beibei, he wanted to play Poplar Fruit again. Kiki was not convinced, and Fong Beibei was very curious. She wanted to see the birth of this miracle with her own eyes and not hear it from Poplar Fruit. Therefore, as she watched, she took out her cell phone and took pictures of the side. Why was she taking videos? Because Fat Dragon said that there was no proof, and the video was proof. Chapter 1035. At one point, Poplar Fruit thought that Fat Dragon had betrayed him for the sake of publicity, so he lost his temper. However, when Fong Beibei pulled Poplar Fruit and told him the truth, Poplar Fruit shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The video had been uploaded to the internet by accident. They were arguing that it was impossible for anyone to clear the game. How could there be such a perverted person who would break his arm after dozens of levels? That Fong Beibei was talking about was none other than her roommates, Lin Xingshan and the others. Fong Beibei lowered her head in shame, her hands moving in front of her chest like Kiki, who had done something bad. She was afraid that Poplar Fruit would lose his temper at her, so she continued. Then I wasn't convinced, so I told them that you cleared the game and showed them the phone. Then Shan, Hua Hua, and the others copied my video, saying that they wanted to show it off to others. I couldn't stop them, so I don't know who got the video and uploaded it to the internet. Fong Beibei's head was almost in her chest. All right, silly, what are you afraid of? Poplar Fruit rubbed Fong Beibei's head and laughed. I won't be angry with you. Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit timidly and asked, Then, why did you lose your temper with Fat Dragon? It's different. Poplar Fruit laughed. The video was uploaded to the internet, and it wasn't something that you could control. What does it have to do with you? I wasn't angry with Fat Dragon because of the video. I was angry that he didn't discuss it with me and used our privacy for profit. I felt that this was a betrayal, and I couldn't let him go on like this. I was afraid that he would turn bad, so I scolded him so hard. Poplar Fruit explained with a smile. You won't even let him explain? Fong Beibei covered her mouth and giggled. She thought of how the fast-talking Poplar Fruit had bombarded Fat Dragon with so much nonsense that he couldn't even retort. Just thinking about it made her laugh. Poplar Fruit said with some regret, Sigh, I have to apologize to him. I shouldn't have scolded him indiscriminately. Uncle, isn't that a deep love, a deep hatred? Fong Beibei mischievously laughed. After the video was uploaded onto the internet, at first, everyone was more focused on marveling at the game designer's crazy design for the last 100 levels. They marveled at the fact that someone could actually complete the game. Is it the video that's being played on the phone? Someone questioned, but it was quickly rejected. This was because the way Poplar Fruit tapped on the screen was as if he was playing the piano. It was steady and rhythmic, giving people a breathtaking feeling. Strong. Some netizens sighed and praised. He's definitely a gaming expert. This video was later dug up by overseas netizens and uploaded to overseas video websites. Just like the original game, it was watched by tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. Within a few days, it broke Poplar Fruit's monthly record from last year's Bali Fashion Week. However, before this, some sharp-eyed netizens noticed, why does my daughter look so familiar? Kiki's appearance rate was too high, even higher than Poplar Fruit's profile, which was always facing her from the side. She kept jumping around in front of the camera and made all kinds of funny expressions. It could be said that the netizens who were watching the video spent half of their time watching the game, and the other half watching Kiki. For example, Kiki suddenly ran over, pulled Fong Beibei down, and pouted her pink little mouth at the camera, as if she was kissing the person watching the video. Then, she giggled and ran away. The viewers couldn't help but praise her for being so cute. Another example was that Kiki couldn't bear the loneliness and ran behind Poplar Fruit to massage her father's back. She looked very sensible, but in fact, she was deliberately making trouble for her father. There was more. In order to disturb her father, Kiki ran to Poplar Fruit and danced in front of him. She even sang a clear song. The vast horizon is my love. The flowers are blooming at the foot of the green mountain. What dance? Isn't this a square dance? The viewers who saw this all laughed together with Fong Bei Bei, who was shooting the video. They were amazed by Poplar Fruit's calmness and liked Kiki's cuteness and vitality. Kiki, be careful that your father doesn't spank your little but later. Fong Bei Bei's smiling voice came from outside the video. Then, she deliberately took a picture of Poplar Fruit's serious expression. Although Poplar Fruit's face was not shown, and because of the theme of the video, many people couldn't help but ignore Poplar Fruit's face for a moment and look at the bright screen in his hand. However, there were still a few Kiki's fans who recognized Kiki. Isn't this clever and cute little angel our Princess Kiki? Ever since Poplar Fruit uploaded a photo of Kiki and Swiss Princess Charlotte, he said that Kiki wanted to be called a princess. Later, her fans all changed to calling her Princess Kiki. From the looks of it, the man sitting there playing games was Kiki's father, the low-key, warm man Poplar Fruit. That's right. No wonder he looked so handsome from the side. It's definitely our long-legged Appa. Some hardcore fans even found several ironclad evidence from the video that proved that it was Poplar Fruit. At this moment, Poplar Fruit's fans and Kiki's fans were in an uproar. Even those who didn't play games watched the video to see the two of them. Especially Poplar Fruit's fans. They were proud and elated. Who said that our long-legged Appa is a nerd? Didn't you see that he's so good at games? Some fans even found the video of Poplar Fruit's stupid fist that he had recorded to help Chun Amlin. They said proudly, "Look, our long-legged Appa knows martial arts." The person who took the video must be the genius goddess. The place where they live together is so luxurious. Our long-legged Appa can make money. It's so blissful to be his girlfriend. More fans dug up other details in the video. The decoration of Poplar Fruit's living room was exposed without any concealment. Fong Bei Bei and Poplar Fruit living together was not a new thing. The two of them were never afraid of others knowing about their love. Poplar Fruit's fans were also very rational and had calmly accepted this fact. In fact, it was mainly because Poplar Fruit was a little father with a daughter. Of course, the arrogance of Poplar Fruit's fans was limited to their circle. Poplar Fruit usually kept a low profile and didn't provoke many enemies, so he didn't receive much criticism. Putting aside the cute fans' arrogance, this video still had a negative impact on the game, Flappy Bird. People saw the boring interface after clearing the game and gradually didn't want to continue playing. Fat Dragon made an emergency public relations announcement, saying that this video was more than a month old and belonged to an incomplete version. The game designer had already updated it. Moreover, after clearing the game, there was a super big Easter egg. Not only that, the company also set up a grand prize of $100,000 to reward the first player to clear the game with their own ability. This grand prize once again ignited the enthusiasm of players all over the world. They started to feel lucky because Poplar Fruit had already announced that he wouldn't participate in this competition. Chapter 1036. Everything was normal in the new semester, except that Poplar Fruit had a little exposure from time to time. But he was used to such a life. Usually, he went to class, played with his children, and kissed his wife. He was busy but orderly. His workload this semester was much heavier than before. In addition to the project he was working on in secret, Chun Zongdai's request was to teach a professional elective course and a public elective course. The number of courses was more than half of what it was before. However, Poplar Fruit didn't care very much. For him, teaching 6 classes a week was no different from teaching 4 classes a week. On the contrary, he hoped to teach a few more classes to pass on what he knew. This was impossible, letting a student like Poplar Fruit, who hadn't graduated with a master's degree, be an assistant lecturer and teach independent courses. This semester, he even taught a professional elective course. It could be said that he had opened a new path for Higashiyama University and even domestic universities. There were faint voices of criticism in the education field, including within Higashiyama University and the School of Foreign Languages. Some people were indignant that poplar fruit was treated so well. However, because of the support of the university and poplar fruit, such things were gradually suppressed. Today, poplar fruit was very happy because he got the half-month data report from Cine Road in September. Forget about other books. Anyway, they were steadily increasing. But the sales of his self-written book, Longing for Dawn, increased rapidly at the beginning of this month because of the news. In the past, no one cared about it. Relatively speaking, only poplar fruits fans bought the book. Now, the book sales squeezed into the top 100 of Amazon China. This showed how impressive the growth rate was. Moreover, even if poplar fruit's exposure was reduced now, the book sales still maintained a rising trend. This was no longer driven by the power of fans or marketing methods. It was entirely because of poplar fruit's book itself. Poplar fruit had always been good at writing. He had studied under Master Mo and had read a lot of literature from all over the world in various languages. Now he had gradually formed his own style. What poplar fruit wrote was not nonsense like Chicken Soup for the Soul, nor was it a travelogue with fewer words and photos. What he wrote was what he had seen, heard, and thought. Not only did poplar fruit write stories about the mountains that people living in the city could not see, but he also wrote them with great depth. Just like the article he posted on Weibo before, he analyzed human nature and reality, which resonated with people. From the reviews on Amazon, it could be seen that many customers who bought the book said, "I cried after reading it. I feel like my soul has been cleansed. I highly recommend it." The book sold well, but it might not be as profitable as Poplar Fruit's translation of Mr. Mo Yan's book. However, money really didn't mean anything. Poplar Fruit felt that he was not as satisfied as he was when he saw this small report, even when he had earned more than 100 million yuan in the past year. When they got home, Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki with one arm and Fong Bei with the other. He kissed him on the left and right, then giggled. "Uncle, you took advantage of me again." Fong Bei chuckled. "What's the good news? Why are you so excited?" "Papa, gold is climbing up." Chi-Chi was at the side, twisting her body to take a look, giggling and laughing. Goldie was currently standing on its hind legs, clinging to Yong's waist, licking its lips. Who knows if it also wanted to be kissed by its master? Yongwa turned her head, stretched out her finger, and gently flicked Goldie's wet nose. Goldie felt the pain and quickly shrank back, barking in a circle, and looked at its master with a wronged and innocent expression. "I'll show you a report." Poplar Fruit put Kiki down and let her play with Gold. Then he took out a square report from his pocket and showed it to Fong Bei. "Is this the report of your book, Longing for Dawn?" Fong Bei knew that Poplar Fruit went to the publishing house today. She asked with a smile, "It must be, and it's selling very well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so excited." Fong Bei knew Poplar Fruit very well. "Look how accurate my guess is." Fong Bei shook the report, supported her waist, and looked up at Poplar Fruit with a smile. Under her playful bangs, a pair of big eyes blinked with a little pride, mischievous. Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched her nose. Then he took the report, pointed at the data on it, and said with some pride, "Baby, look, my book is in the top 100. It's already in the top 100. When I read it last week, I still had to search." Fong Bei was so happy that she blurted it out. Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment, rubbed his nose and asked, "You often help me read it?" He didn't even pay attention to it. His girlfriend paid so much attention to his work, and the happiness in his heart was rising. "Not really. I used to read it often. Last time my dad wanted to read it, so I bought a few for him." Fong Bei blushed and stuck out her tongue and said. She pointed to a note on the graph and smiled proudly. "Here, I sold 106,000 copies that day, and I contributed a little." Poplar Fruit rubbed Fong Bei's head, hugged this lovely person in his arms, and said with a smile, "If you want to read it, I'll give it to Dad. Why'd I have to spend money again? You even bought a few copies." "My dad also wants to give it to his relatives and friends." Fong Bei giggled. She looked up, looked at Poplar Fruit's face, and said, "You're on the news. My mom called many neighbors to watch TV at home." "Really? Why didn't you tell me?" Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He had never heard of this news. In fact, Poplar Fruit felt that Fong Beibei's mother had always had some opinions about him, and even didn't like him very much. I didn't dare to tell you before. I was afraid you'd think my mom is snobbish, Fong Beibei said in a low voice. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "How can that be? We're a family. Your mom is happy for me. I'm very happy." It was a bit like her son was admitted to a good school and wanted everyone to know, wasn't it? At dinner in the evening, Fong Beibei suddenly raised her head and suggested with a smile, "Uncle, didn't I tell you before to see when there's a chance to invite Sister Yujia over for dinner?" Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. His hand that was feeding Kiki stopped in midair. Kiki also quivered. She first looked at her father, then looked at Sister Beibei, her little ears pricked up. "The day after tomorrow is the autumn equinox. Let's invite her over for dinner, okay?" Fong Beibei finished the rest of her words. Poplar Fruit carefully looked at his girlfriend's face. It was very good. There was nothing strange, but Poplar Fruit still didn't dare to neglect and said tentatively, "You don't have to be like this, right? She's very busy." Chapter 1037. Previously, Fong Beibei also mentioned this matter, but Poplar Fruit thought that she was just joking, and after the two of them got busy, this matter faded away. But today, Fong Beibei mentioned it again, and it seemed that she was serious. "She's quite busy." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said in embarrassment, "Maybe she's not free. It's just dinner tonight. How could she not be free?" Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit snappily and said, "And Sister Yuji's lifestyle is not good. How could she not take care of her body and work so hard?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, "Baby, you're very strange." "It's true, don't think too much. Just simply invite her to our house for a meal. The last time she came, she didn't have a good tour of our house." Fong Beibei bit her lower lip, looked up at Poplar Fruit, and said, "You're not honest. Tell me the truth." Poplar Fruit was not familiar with Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei's action, it was obvious that she was guilty of lying. If Kiki was not here, Poplar Fruit wanted to pull his girlfriend up and give her a spanking. "I know. I'll tell you the truth." Fong Beibei saw Poplar Fruit's frown, which was a little scary. She pouted and explained, "I know, my relationship with Sister Yuja is not very good. Last time we even quarreled." "You shouldn't have quarreled," Kiki whispered at the side. Being glanced at by her father, she immediately shrunk her head and played with the toy in her hand, but her ears were still perked up to eavesdrop. "Yes, we shouldn't have quarreled." Fong Beibei really reflected and said, "I understand now. I should have confidence in you, uncle. No matter what others say, you will never abandon me. You're so good to me, so why should I be jealous?" After watching too many soap operas with Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit's thoughts were also somewhat distorted by the melodramatic plots in these soap operas. In fact, he really misunderstood Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei sincerely wanted to invite Zheng Yujia to their home. "I want to fix my relationship with Sister Yujia. Even if we can't be friends, we don't want to be enemies like we are now." Fong Beibei felt a little wronged, but she still spoke from the bottom of her heart. "It's also uncomfortable for you to be stuck in the middle. A large part of your current job is related to dealing with her. I'm not that kind of selfish woman. You give me a sense of security, and I don't want to cause you trouble." Fong Beibei's eyes were very clear, and Poplar Fruit saw his own figure in them. "Fool!" Poplar Fruit reached over, held her hand, and gently squeezed it. He smiled and said, "It doesn't matter what I do. What matters is that you're happy. You don't have to suffer for me." "I'm not suffering for myself." Fong Beibei anxiously defended herself. She was so anxious that the tears that had been rolling in her eyes earlier spilled out. "You really aren't. I won't be jealous anymore and live a life of fear every day." "You're really not afraid?" Poplar Fruit smiled and scared her. "You're very likely to be inviting a wolf into the house. You're not a little sheep. What am I afraid of? Anyway, I'm entrusting my life to you." Fong Beibei held Poplar Fruit's hand and rubbed her face on it lovingly. Her skin was very good, soft and delicate without any makeup. "You really want to invite her over?" Poplar Fruit lovingly pinched Fong Beibei's nose and confirmed again. "Of course. Fong Beibei gave a serious and affirmative answer and said, "Don't worry, I won't mess around. I'll try my best to reconcile with you, Jejejia. You're really a fool. Fortunately, you met me. If it were another man who had a mistress outside, you'd still have to cook and send food to her at home." Poplar Fruit flicked Fong Beibei's forehead and helplessly agreed. "Okay, I'll give her a call after dinner and see if she's free. I just need to remember that you're good to me, Uncle." Fong Beibei giggled. She dragged a chair and ran over to Poplar Fruit's side. She hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and said coquettishly, "I also want you to feed me. No, Kiki is starving." Kiki, who had been waiting for a long time, hurriedly grabbed her father's right hand and snorted, "Mama Ma is not honest. Kiki kindly let you talk, but after talking, you came to snatch Kiki's papa?" That's right, that's right." Fong Beibei and Kiki laughed and played with each other. After dinner, when they were washing the dishes, Poplar Fruit could not help but ask, "Baby, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me the truth at the beginning? I was afraid that you'd think I was jealous." Fong Beibei pouted and said, "I always give you the feeling that I'm jealous, so your impression of me will get worse and worse." "Then you're terrible at lying." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "I saw through it at a glance." "Oh, you're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to lie either, okay?" Fong Beibei stretched out her wet little hand and pinched Poplar Fruit's soft waist. "If you lie, your nose will become sharp and long like Pinocchio's. I'm not Kiki. This kind of fairy tale can't scare me." Poplar Fruit's eyes turned. He first peeked outside. There was no movement, so he gently hugged Fong Beibei's slender body from behind. Then he held her hand in the water, lowered his head, and rubbed her ears together. "What are you doing?" Fong Beibei's legs were a little weak. She hurriedly held Poplar Fruit's hand and moaned. "When I heard you mention Pinocchio, I thought of a joke." Poplar Fruit smiled and whispered in her ear. He also used his breath to stir her crystal little ears. "However, I'll tell you when Kiki falls asleep at night." Of course, Poplar Fruit was not the kind of man who would mess around. He let go of Fong Beibei, who was teased by him, and smiled mischievously. "Bad uncle." Fong Beibei's cheeks were as red as if she was drunk, and it took her a while to recover from her heavy breathing. She glared at Poplar Fruit, patted her messy clothes, and then quickly bowed her head to wash the dishes. This was just some of the small things they often did in private. As for the big things at night, the young couple said that it was not enough for outsiders to know. Poplar Fruit did not forget the business. When Fong Beibei went to bathe Kiki, he called Zheng Yujie and sincerely invited Zheng Yujie on behalf of Fong Beibei. Zheng Yujie was silent for a while. Then she smiled softly and said, "So you've entered the house?" Ahem. Poplar Fruit did not point out Zheng Yujie's inappropriate choice of words. He smiled and said, "If you don't have time, I won't force you. Really, there is no other meaning in inviting you over. Beibei simply wants to fix the relationship with you." So hateful. Zheng Yujie didn't want to go. Chapter 1038. Go. Why don't you go? To be honest, Zheng Yujie didn't want to go because no matter how luxurious it was, no more luxurious than her own home, it was also a happy little nest. If she went there and saw Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei showing off their love, she would only feel more depressed. However, Zheng Yujie's stubbornness emerged again. "Since she dares to invite me, I dare to go." Zheng Yujie snorted and said, "Okay, don't talk nonsense. See you the day after tomorrow. Do you think you can show off in front of me like this?" Zheng Yujie threw the phone on the bed, unconvinced. She picked up the clothes on the ground with her feet and was ready to take a shower. She still snorted, "I'll show you why the flowers are so red." The autumn equinox was on Friday. Because it was a holiday, Fong Beibei's afternoon training was canceled. Poplar Fruit sent her and Kiki home at noon, but he still had classes, so he went to school in the afternoon. Anyway, she gets off work very late. "Don't rush to prepare the meal." Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Fong Beibei before leaving, "Wait for me to come back and prepare slowly. It's no problem." However, Poplar Fruit didn't know that Zheng Yujie took a day off and also gave all the staff a day off to buy clothes. When Zheng Yujia came over, Fong Beibei was playing a mathematical game of matchsticks with Kiki. For example, now, Fong Beibei put many matchsticks into a mathematical equation of 7 minus 11 is equal to 4. You can only move one matchstick to make this equation work, Fong Beibei said with a smile. Living in a family of top students, Kiki's education had never fallen behind. Poplar fruit and Fong Beibei did not teach her anything. At most, they would use some interesting games to teach Kiki some basic knowledge. As for how much she could understand, they would not test it repeatedly, nor would they ask for too much. However, Kiki was indeed talented and intelligent. After playing a few times, she had learned most of the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. However, this matchstick game had stumped Kiki. She stared at the matchstick on the floor and pondered. She held her small face and squeezed out a smile. However, looking at the tangled eyebrows and big bright eyes, coupled with the smile that didn't have a trace of a smile, it was really awkward to the point of being cute. If it were any other child, they would probably wave their claws in annoyance if they couldn't solve it after a while. However, Kiki had probably inherited her father's indomitable spirit when it came to solving problems. She kept staring at the matchstick, forming an image in her head and moving it around in various ways. "Goldie, don't mess around." Fong Beibei hugged Goldie, who poked its head in. Just now, Goldie came over and sneezed, blowing away the matchstick. Looking at its eyes now, it seemed that it wanted to move its claws and fiddle with it. Being hugged by its owner, Goldie simply lay down, raised its neck, and comfortably enjoyed its owner's tickling. Goldie was almost 2 years old, and it had finally grown into a dog. Usually, when it was on all fours, it was almost 1 meter tall. When it stood up, it was even able to put its hand on Fong Beibei's shoulder. This kind of big dog needed a special dog license in the city. Fortunately, Goldie had a gentle personality, and golden retrievers were not as scary as fierce big dogs like Tibetan Mastiffs. On the contrary, it was very amiable. When they walked in the neighborhood, Goldie was often held by other children to play with. "I don't know how to do it." Kiki scratched her head in distress and asked Fong Beibei for help. Ma, why can't you do it?" 4 could become 11, 9. 11 could become 4. 7 could become 1. But there was no way to make the equation work. Kiki showed all the changes she could think of to Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei bent down, put the matchstick back into place, and said to Kiki with a smile, "Kiki, in mathematics, you have to learn to think in reverse. There is definitely not only one way to solve a problem. Only by being flexible can you solve it." Goldie's nose was blocked by Fong Beibei's clothes and stomach, and it couldn't breathe. It struggled for a moment, then quickly turned over and ran away. 7 minus 11 doesn't equal 4, right? Fong Beibei asked with a smile. "Yes, 11 minus 7 equals 4. Kiki nodded, her mind clear. "Then, what does 11 minus 4 equal?" Fong Beibei continued to prompt. She didn't directly tell Kiki how to solve the problem, but guided her to think. Kiki's eyes lit up, and she quickly held Fong Beibei's hand and said, Ma, don't say it first." "Kiki knows." Kiki quickly reached out her small hand, picked up a matchstick with the equal sign on the right, and moved it under the minus sign on the left. 7 equals 11 minus 4. So it's that simple. Kiki jumped up excitedly and high-fived Ma. "High five." She jumped for a while, then sat down, licked her lips unsatisfied, and urged, Ma, hurry up, continue." Although she didn't solve it herself, Fong Beibei's prompt seemed to have opened a brand new door in Kiki's mind. Her mind seemed to have become lighter and clearer, and this feeling made Kiki want to stop. "Math is fun, right?" Fong Beibei smiled proudly at Kiki. If language was Poplar Fruit's signature, then math was Fong Beibei's domain. Kiki had already inherited Poplar Fruit's language talent, but she didn't show any special talent in math. Fong Beibei didn't intend to make Kiki a math genius or a mathematician. She only hoped that Kiki could learn to think logically in math, so that Poplar Fruit wouldn't drag her down and make her a math idiot. Now it seemed that Kiki still had a lot of potential. At this moment, the doorbell suddenly rang. Fong Bei set up a new question for Kiki to ponder and play with, then got up and went to the door. Through the visual access system, Fong Bei saw Zheng Yujie standing downstairs. She was wearing sunglasses as usual. Today, the bright white frame of the sunglasses looked very fashionable and didn't seem to be pulled down by the clothes she was wearing. Yes, Zheng Yujie didn't dress sexy today, but changed into a simple and carefree sportswear, as if she was going out to play golf. However, because the short-sleeve top was tight, it looked bulging in the front, and the ordinary sportswear couldn't hide her hot body. Previously, it was mentioned that Zheng Yujie was on vacation to buy clothes, but in the end, she wasn't satisfied with all of them. Doesn't poplar fruit like purity? Why did I dress so gorgeously and let Fong Bei outshine me? Zheng Yujie gritted her teeth and changed into the sportswear that she only wore when she went to the gym. Seeing Zheng Yujie standing downstairs, Fong Bei was stunned. She didn't know that Zheng Yujie could come over so early. Didn't Uncle say that she would only come over at night? It's only 3 o'clock now. Fong Bei's heart was beating fast. Without poplar fruit, she looked shorter when she saw Zheng Yujie. However, since the guest was here, she could not let her come up, right? Chapter 1039. Silence, stillness, and some noise. That was the current situation at home. Silence and stillness came from the absence of poplar fruit. Not long after, Fong Bei and Zheng Yujie fell into an awkward silence. As for the noise, it was the sound of Chi-Chi and Goldie playing. If it wasn't for Kiki, it would be as if there was no one at home. In fact, seeing Fong Bei, Zheng Yujie couldn't help but ask a few questions, but seeing Kiki there, she was too embarrassed to open her mouth. Zheng Yujie simply sat on the sofa casually and played with her phone, as if it was her own home, crossing her legs, leaving Fong Bei alone restlessly. Kiki, go upstairs and play first, okay? Mommy wants to talk to your auntie for a while. Fong Bei whispered to Kiki. This won't do. Originally, they wanted to ease their relationship. How could they be in a deadlock like this? Hearing the word mother, Zheng Yujie's heart was sour, and she was a little unhappy. Okay then, Mommy Ma, don't quarrel. Kiki was a little reluctant, but her eyes rolled, and she agreed. Don't worry, Mommy Ma won't quarrel with Auntie. Fong Bei smiled and pushed Kiki's little butt. Kiki ran upstairs, and Goldie, who didn't seem to like the atmosphere downstairs, also followed. The two little guys ran to Kiki's game room. However, the little guy didn't close the door, but raised a finger at Goldie. Shoo! Goldie might not understand other people's orders, but it could execute Kiki's orders without any mistakes. Goldie sat down with its front legs, stuck out its tongue, and looked at Kiki, wagging its tail on the ground. It was very obedient. It was like an adventure. Kiki nervously licked her lips, her big eyes sparkling. She picked up the slippers, put them in the room, and then tiptoed out. In the corridor, Chi-Chi turned around and looked back. Gold was also nervously crawling behind her, sticking close to the ground. Kiki raised her little finger again. Goldie stuck out its tongue and put its head on the ground again. The two little guys were like thieves, sneaking to the stairs. Kiki didn't dare to look up, so she had to lie on the ground like Gold and eavesdrop. Ooh! Goldie moved forward and squeezed under its little master's body, using its fluffy body as a cushion for its little master. Kiki smiled brightly, but she didn't make a sound. The two little fellows leaned against each other and eavesdropped. Sister Yujie, please have some tea. Fong Bei diligently made tea, trying to start conversation. Although the tea set and tea were bought by Poplar Fruit, as a girl born and raised in Guangdong province, she still had the skill to make tea. I don't drink tea. Give me a bottle of mineral water. Zheng Yujie stretched her body and lazily said, Sister Yujie, don't drink mineral water all the time. It's not good. This is poo. Tea grown in the mountains of Guishan. I heard that it's a local specialty. It's rich in anti-aging catechin compounds. We women drink some of this tea. It's good for our skin. Drink some. Fong Bei persuaded. Zheng Yujie frowned. Hearing Fong Bei's words, she was actually a little tempted. Moreover, Fong Beibei's skin was really good. Her face was rosy and tender. It was much better than her skin that needed to be maintained with skincare products. In the end, Zheng Yujie drank it. However, she still found fault with it. Beibei, tell me, why don't you turn on the air conditioner in such hot weather? Zheng Yujie said with a smile. Is it to save money for poplar fruit? Don't worry. Now that poplar fruit makes a lot of money, he doesn't need to save money at all. Fong Beibei smiled and waved her hand, saying, No, I don't turn on the air conditioner because it's cool in the upper floors. With the balcony doors and windows open, I don't feel hot. Besides, it's not good to always have air conditioner. It's easy to cause respiratory disease. You think that's the case? Is it because poplar fruit always has to endure the heat because of you? Zheng Yujie was very unhappy with Fong Beibei's long-winded manner and aggressively asked. That's what he said. Fong Beibei laughed and said, When I was in the dormitory, I used to turn on the air conditioner with my roommates. I'm very afraid of the heat. Later, when I lived with Uncle, I learned a lot of healthy living habits from him, and now my body is a lot better. Listening to Fong Beibei's words, Zheng Yujie was somewhat silent. Sister Yujie, if you feel hot, I'll go and get the air conditioner for you. It's now in the guest room downstairs. Fong Beibei stood up and said. Chi-Chi was startled by her sudden movement. She hurriedly pulled Goldie and fled in a hurry. The pitter-patter of their footsteps could be heard from upstairs. Fong Beibei felt a bit strange, but she didn't think much about it because her spirit was still tense. No need. Zheng Yujie waved her hand, snorted, and said, If you can endure it, I can also endure it. Beibei. Zheng Yujie simply didn't pretend to be cold. Pretending is not her character. She likes to be straightforward. Her pair of beautiful red phoenix eyes stared straight at Fong Beibei and asked, I know the reason why you invited me here. Do you think that by putting on the attitude of the hostess, you'll make me back down? The atmosphere suddenly became tense, as if there was a powder keg placed there, ready to explode at any moment. However, today, Fong Beibei didn't want to quarrel with her. She quickly waved her hand and nervously said, No, Sister Yujie, you misunderstood. I don't want to put on any attitude to provoke you. This time, I invited you to my house to ease the relationship between us. I like poplar fruit. Do you think that with this, you can still be my friend? Zheng Yujie disdainfully smiled. Don't be naive, little sister. You're a student, yes, but you're also an adult. Don't pretend that you don't know anything. I know, we're unlikely to be friends, Fong Beibei sadly said, but I still want to improve the relationship between us as much as possible. We can't always be like this, confronting each other like enemies. What do you mean? Zheng Yujie didn't understand. Every time Uncle wants to go to the publishing house, he has to carefully ask for my opinion. Fong Beibei said. She raised her head and sincerely said, I really don't have anything to do with it. He looked for you because of the publishing house. I understand. I don't want him to do a bad job because of me, and I don't want him to be caught in a dilemma between us. What do you mean by a dilemma? Zheng Yujie couldn't help but ask. Obviously, poplar fruit has already made his choice, okay? But she didn't say anything else. She didn't want to expose her weakness that night in front of Fong Beibei. It's just that, if our relationship can ease a little, Uncle won't have to bear too much psychological pressure. Fong Beibei explained. Chapter 1040. Then why don't you give him to me? Hearing Fong Beibei's words, Zheng Yujie stood up and said angrily, You know how important I am to him. If you love him, you should let him go and not drag him down. It seemed that they were back to the topic of the argument between Zheng Yujie and Fong Beibei. No, it's not like that. This time, Fong Beibei did not back down, but she was not in a hurry to argue. She said softly, Sister Yujie, don't be anxious. Sit down and listen to me slowly. Let's not quarrel, okay? Zheng Yujie really couldn't do anything to Fong Beibei in this state. She didn't want to make a scene out of nothing. She sat down with her arms crossed in anger and said, Who wants to quarrel with you? Uncle, I won't give him to you. Although her voice was soft, Fong Beibei still said firmly, Moreover, Uncle won't give up on me. I know. Aren't you spoiled because of his favor? Zheng Yujie was irritated. She couldn't bear to hear Fong Beibei say that because it was the truth, other than relying on poplar fruits, love to bully me. What else can you do? It's really not like that. Fong Beibei was so anxious that she wanted to cry, but she wouldn't be weak anymore. She sniffed and said, I don't want to bully you, but aren't our hearts the same? We both want to be good to him, right? I've come to a conclusion. Why did Uncle and I get together? Fong Beibei said seriously, as if she was solving a math problem. The first reason, of course, is that we both had a good impression of each other from the beginning. Although it wasn't love at first sight, but really, when we first met, we felt good about each other. Love at first sight is a lie, Zheng Yujie said sourly. Yes, that's right. Love at first sight can't last long. But later, when we met again, we slowly got to know each other, and we began to discover each other's strengths, which attracted us. Fong Beibei recalled sweetly. That's the second. Thirdly, we can feel a sense of security from each other. Fong Beibei smiled and said, You probably know that I actually don't have a sense of security. Previously, I was always jealous because my heart was not at ease and I would always let my imagination run wild. But fortunately, Uncle has never left me. But Uncle is also very insecure. Fong Beibei said softly. Ever since Lu Yunran, the girlfriend of the uncle in front of me, left him, it caused him a lot of trauma. When I first saw him, Uncle's eyes were filled with sadness. However, in order to take care of Kiki, Uncle could only be strong. He didn't even have the time to think about whether his future life would be a mess because of the child. He didn't want to start a new relationship because he was afraid. He was afraid that he would lose her again, afraid that someone would reject him again because of Kiki. I heard from Uncle that I was the first person besides him that Kiki could accept at that time. Fong Beibei smiled and said, So, when he first confessed, I wondered if it was because of Kiki that he chose me. Later, I found out that Uncle actually really likes me. Fong Beibei recalled the 2 months when she insisted on keeping a distance from Poplar Fruit's life. Every night, the two of them would talk on the phone, and they couldn't wait to tell each other the trivial things in their lives. These were all bits and pieces of happiness. The relationship with Kiki was just a small catalyst. Fong Beibei smiled and said, Because I like Kiki very much, and Kiki liked me very much, Uncle felt a sense of security, so he mustered up the courage to confess. Are you telling me your story to provoke me? Zheng Yujie listened silently and finally couldn't help but ask. Fong Beibei's story was beautiful, but she was her rival in love after all. No. Fong Beibei quickly shook her head and said, I accidentally said so much, but in fact, what I want to say is that I'm not completely useless. What Uncle wants is a family. I can accompany him and Kiki, and then we can build a warm and happy family together. Fong Beibei said, Besides, when he needs to work, I can take care of Kiki. Actually, this was also something that Zheng Yujie couldn't do. She was a career woman. If she had to stay at home, change diapers for the children, wash clothes, give up her job, and revolve around the little one every day, if she had to wash the nail polish on her hands, wash the rice and cook, Zheng Yujie would rather die. What you do, isn't it the work of a nanny? If you hire a nanny, won't you be replaced in minutes? Zheng Yujie was still somewhat unwilling to admit this point. It's not the same, Fong Beibei softly retorted. A nanny can't give me the love and companionship that I can give to Uncle, can't give me the care and guidance that I can give to Kiki. Then what's the meaning of your life? No job? No friends? No independent thoughts? Do women have to become the vassal of the family? Zheng Yujie suddenly felt that Fong Beibei was very pitiful. Although she disdained, she still frowned and asked. Fong Beibei laughed and said, Sister Yujie, you may have really misunderstood. The companionship I'm talking about doesn't mean that every day, every night, every moment. For example, taking care of Kiki. If I have time, I will take care of her. If Uncle has time, he will also accompany Kiki. If we don't have time, then we will ask our parents, relatives, or friends to help take care of her. Apart from family, we all have our own studies and things to do. Fong Beibei laughed and said, Recently, I've been busy preparing for the competition, and Uncle has helped me with a lot of things. Sometimes at night, in order to let me have more time to study, he doesn't even do the housework for me. Speaking of friends, Uncle and I are clear about these interpersonal relationships. On the weekend, it's common to go out with friends and go shopping. How can you say that we don't have our own lives? Fong Bei said, "We just put family in the most important position and give the best time to the people we love the most." Zheng Yujie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was really not convinced, but she found that she had no reason to refute. What Fong Bei said was exactly what she could not do. At that time, if the question was asked in reverse, it was actually correct. Apart from adding flowers to the foundation of Poplar Fruit's success, what can you give him? Can he be happy? Chapter 1041. Finally, Poplar Fruit came back. He came back with big and small bags of raw meat and vegetables. He opened the door easily and took off his shoes while shouting, "Baby, I'm back." However, when he saw two women in front of him, the expression on his face could no longer be relaxed. What? Zheng Yujie came early? Fong Bei came over to help Poplar Fruit take the bags in his hand. She smiled and explained to him, "It turns out that your publishing house is on holiday today." Sister Yujie came early. They didn't fight? Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He looked at their expressions suspiciously, and then looked at Kiki, who had just arrived. Fong Bei and Zheng Yujie were fine. Although they didn't talk and laugh very exaggeratedly, the atmosphere was not tense. Kiki was smiling happily. Seeing her father come back, the little girl was the happiest one. "Papa, Papa." Kiki asked her father to pick her up, then put her arms around her father's neck and whispered in his ear. Kiki learned a few math problems today and played games with matchsticks. "Kiki will teach you, okay?" When there was something good, of course, she wanted to share it with her favorite father as soon as possible. Poplar Fruit smiled and kissed his daughter's face, saying, "Not now. Isn't the aunt at home? I have to entertain the guests, so I have to cook for everyone. Kiki can teach me later?" When she said that she was a guest, Zheng Yujie felt very uncomfortable. She sighed faintly, crossed her hands in front of her chest, and stood proudly. "Well, Kiki is hungry too. Papa, hurry up and cook." Kiki smiled and kissed her father, then ran to play with Goldie. Fong Bei just entered the kitchen. Poplar Fruit looked at Zheng Yujie in confusion and asked, "Why are you here so early? Are you two all right?" Zheng Yujie snorted and said, "Who knew you weren't at home? Don't worry, I didn't do anything to my daughter's friend. Isn't world peace what you want to see?" It was impossible for her to admit that she was suppressed by Fong Bei's words today. Miss Zheng had never admitted defeat. Poplar Fruit laughed dryly and fled into the kitchen. Fong Bei was sorting the vegetables bought by Poplar Fruit into baskets and plates. "Baby, you guys are okay, right?" Poplar Fruit pressed Fong Bei's shoulder from behind and helped her massage it. He was still a little nervous as he asked. Fong Bei said with a smile, "It's okay, don't worry. Sister Yujie came 2 hours early, and I talked to her for a long time. Then we talked about a lot of things. Even if we can't become good friends, our relationship won't be as tense as before." She made it sound so simple. Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little unbelievable, because he knew Zheng Yujie's character. Once she decided on something, even 8 horses couldn't pull her back. Moreover, she didn't listen to advice. Even if Poplar Fruit asked her to give up many times, she still wouldn't be willing to. And between the two women, in Poplar Fruit's view, it could be said that the relationship between them was like fire and water. In TV dramas, this was called a harem fight, but on the internet, it was called a cat fight. It was completely impossible to ease the competitive relationship. So how could it make Poplar Fruit's jaw drop and have a dramatic change in just 2 hours? What's more, this matter was led by the weak and delicate girl that he had always thought of as someone who needed his protection. Poplar Fruit didn't know that in fact, Fong Bei was talented and intelligent and could distinguish right from wrong. Previously, she cried and was jealous from time to time because she hadn't completely recovered from the shadow of her first love. Since Poplar Fruit accompanied her through the most emotional night, Fong Beibei had completely let go of the past and really recovered her original personality. Just like when Poplar Fruit first met her, the bright and intelligent girl was back. Fong Beibei understood that instead of being timid, it was better to be magnanimous. Since she couldn't change other people's thoughts, Zheng Yujie was determined to pursue Poplar Fruit's obsession, and she couldn't change the fact that Zheng Yujie and Poplar Fruit were in contact. After all, it was Poplar Fruit's career. For the sake of Poplar Fruit, she had to learn to accept her. The acceptance here was naturally not the kind of dirty acceptance that everyone thought, but turning an enemy into a friend. Even if they couldn't become friends, they didn't want to be enemies. Through understanding her, she would also let her understand herself and her family. Perhaps one day, she would finally let go. Fong Beibei was open and aboveboard. She put all her thoughts on the surface from the beginning to let Zheng Yujie know and let Poplar Fruit understand her efforts. She was using her tolerance to better protect this family. And this kind of open scheme just happened to hit Zheng Yujie's weak spot. And it was also something that Zheng Yujie knew but couldn't resolve. It was also for the sake of Poplar Fruit. She couldn't reject Fong Beibei's kindness to her. And it was also for the sake of Poplar Fruit. She couldn't quarrel with Fong Beibei anymore. As for other despicable means, Queen Zheng wouldn't do it, and she disdained to use them. Damn it, Fong Beibei had shown her trump card right from the start. But even so, she didn't have any trump card in her hands that could win. But even so, Zheng Yujie wouldn't admit defeat. Wasn't it just becoming friends? Wasn't it just using Poplar Fruit's loyalty to scare others? Zheng Yujie secretly made a push in her heart. Can't handle a little girl like you? I don't believe that I can't. Becoming friends could also increase the chances of her interacting with Poplar Fruit. Zheng Yujie was full of fighting spirit as she thought. Who's going to win and who's going to lose, it's still hard to say. Poplar Fruit didn't know what women were thinking, and he couldn't be bothered to think about it. All right, it's good that you guys don't fight. Haha, I'll go change my clothes. I won't cook Chinese food today, but I'll cook a nice and delicious French meal for you guys. Poplar Fruit patted Fong Beibei's slender waist and walked out laughing. Poplar Fruit didn't learn French cuisine systematically, but there were many guides on the internet. He had tried it a few times before, and with his sensitive sense of smell and talent towards food, he got the hang of it easily. The specialty of French cuisine was that the food couldn't be overcooked, and it had to be cooked to 60 to 70% to ensure the freshness of the food as much as possible. The sauce had to be prepared carefully and use less cooking oil. Butter, cheese, and gelatin could all be added into the list of ingredients. The most important thing was the plate presentation. It had to be delicious, and it had to look good. Kiki liked to eat French cuisine, and she liked to eat French cuisine made by her father even more. Her opinion couldn't be used as a reference. However, Zheng Yujie, who was never picky about food but was very picky about her compliments, actually gave Poplar Fruit a 5-star rating. This made Poplar Fruit very surprised. French cuisine paired with a Mediterranean-style restaurant, dining table, and tableware. Fong Beibei and Zheng Yujie both drank a little red wine, and their slightly tipsy appearance was very beautiful. The two of them even forced Poplar Fruit to choose the best. Fong Beibei's purity, Zheng Yujie's coquettishness, Fong Beibei's affection, Zheng Yujie's stubbornness, Fong Beibei's purity, Zheng Yujie's coquettish, Fong Beibei's affection, and Zheng Yujie's stubbornness. It was really hard to choose. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had an idea. He raised Kiki's little hand next to him and said with a smile, "No one is more beautiful than my family's Princess Kiki." Kiki also thinks so. The little fellow was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Chapter 1042. A few days later, Fong Beibei followed the team to the United States. She had a lot of responsibilities this year, as she had to lead a small team to participate in the competition. Compared to last year, with the support of Poplar Fruit's secret manuals, the entire Higashiyama University was able to achieve great success. This year's results would not be very optimistic. This was because the secret manuals would definitely be leaked out. Many schools not only obtained Poplar Fruit's secret manuals through various channels, but they also invited their own English majors to train their team members. Dongshan University had already lost its original advantage. It could only compete with its domestic and foreign opponents with real swords and guns. But this is good too, Fong Bei said to Poplar Fruit in high spirits. Only in a fair environment can we know if our results are better than others, and if we can get the most valuable first place. As the team leader this year, Fong Bei was aiming for first place. This confidence did not only come from Poplar Fruit's private lessons, but also from her unremitting efforts over the past year. After last year's competition, Fong Bei clearly understood her own shortcomings. With her talent in mathematics and the guidance of her mentor, Fong Bei was no longer the same as before. Poplar Fruit and Kiki set off to meet up with Fong Bei on National Day. At that time, Fong Bei had just finished her closed preparation period and competition period. Poplar Fruit had also adjusted the school's curriculum, so they had 2 weeks to play in the United States. After going to the United States, they naturally had to visit their old friend Alan. Other than bringing the children to play in Children's Paradise Disneyland, Poplar Fruit also chatted with Alan for a long time about their achievements over the past year. Because of your card game, we have been cursed a lot less this year. Alan smiled with a red face. Not only was there a lot less criticism, but Hearthstone was also a game that allowed Blizzard to earn a lot of money. The reason why there wasn't a lot of scolding was because Blizzard liked to skip votes. Needless to say about the World of Warcraft, there were a lot of veteran-level players who were so old that they were about to turn into ashes. They were really crying and scolding Blizzard for not doing anything, but they were still reluctant to play this old game that had accompanied them for more than a decade. As for the Hero of the Storm that was about to be released, it had been delayed again and again. Due to some of the pictures and news leaked during the closed beta, the hungry netizens were already stomping their feet and cursing nonstop. Fortunately, Hearthstone was able to temporarily save the burning flames. The success of your games on mobile platforms is much better than Hearthstone's, Alan said enviously. Although he would never say this in front of outsiders, he honestly admitted Blizzard's decline in the mobile game market to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit laughed. "How is this my game? It's all designed by my friends. It has nothing to do with me." Although he had invested in popular games such as I Am MT and Flappy Bird, Poplar Fruit didn't care about it and didn't know the details of the operation. Even if they made a lot of money, it was just a number on his account. However, when it came to mobile platforms, Poplar Fruit still had some experience because he had a part in Flappy Bird's success. Mobile games nowadays aren't just carriers of games. They're also important tools for people to spend their fragmented time. Poplar Fruit spoke with assurance. Moreover, for games, people are more willing to share with their friends, just like in previous online games where they could team up with their friends to fight monsters. For mobile games, if you can increase social interaction, you'll definitely be able to achieve good results. Alan didn't dare to disagree with the first part, but when it came to the relationship between games and social interaction, Alan nodded silently. This was because in the second half of the year, a lot of outstanding games had shown this trend, and Flappy Bird was the most dazzling representative. Poplar Fruit didn't understand these things. The only reason he could speak with assurance was because he had read a lot of books and read too many of the latest and most comprehensive newspapers and magazines. Among them, there were many technology and financial magazines that analyzed these business models, and there were many in-depth works by capable people. Poplar Fruit relied on his strong memory to be able to talk on paper, and Alan was stunned. After playing at Alan's house for a day, Poplar Fruit brought the absent-minded Fong Bei back to the City of Angels where the competition was held. In the process of watching a Lakers game, they received a notification from their teacher. After listening to the phone call, Fong Bei excitedly threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms and wiped away her tears. Fong Bei won again. Yes, Fong Bei won the special prize this time, the most valuable special prize. How could she not be excited? In order to prove her ability, this time, she didn't team up with other senior brothers and sisters who had won excellent results. Instead, she teamed up with 2 girls in the same grade who had officially joined the training this year. No one was optimistic about them. This year was different from last year. Any team in Higashiyama University could win the prize. Some teachers were worried that Fong Bei, who had won the special prize last year, wouldn't get anything this year, so they persuaded her. Some senior brothers and sisters who were rejected even looked at her coldly. Fong Bei only had their own efforts and Poplar Fruit's encouragement. As the team leader, she took the lead. Even if she had to learn English, which was the most painful thing for her, Poplar Fruit took her to memorize words and practice writing papers in English every day. She needed to carry the whole team and lead them forward together, because she was carrying too much. After Poplar Fruit came over and took her out to play, she couldn't go home to enjoy herself. She was always worried, thinking about her teammates and the unannounced results. Finally, the results were announced. Fong Bei also shed tears in Yang Guo's arms, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She was just trying to be strong. After all, she was still a 20-year-old girl, wasn't she? Because it was halftime, the cameras in the Staples Stadium accurately captured the scene in the audience. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei were on TV. Of course, they didn't know that the scene was also captured on Chinese online TV. The TV stations were broadcasting commercials at this time. But Poplar Fruit noticed the cheers of the audience. Baby, look! Poplar Fruit held Fong Bei, who was still crying, and his gluttonous daughter, who was holding popcorn, and pointed at the big live TV and laughed. Kiss! Kiss! The cheers of the audience were endless. Although no one recognized Poplar Fruit for the time being, this was a common warm-up program in an NBA stadium. Kobe, who had not returned because of his injury, stood up and clapped in his suit on the sidelines. Baby, come on! Poplar Fruit, who rarely showed affection in front of outsiders, looked affectionately at Fong Bei, who was wiping her tears and giggling foolishly. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Kiki wants it too. Kiki didn't care about the others. When she saw her parents kissing, she held the popcorn bucket and pouted her little mouth. Her actions stole the limelight from Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei. The audience looked at Kiki on the screen and laughed loudly. Poplar Fruit raised his head and smiled as he kissed his daughter's little mouth lightly. Then, the whole family happily waved their hands at the camera that was approaching them. Chapter 1043. His rise to fame this time was similar to last year. The only difference was that last year's star was Mr. M.O., while this time, Poplar Fruit was the only star. Of course, the level of fame had increased, but the form was still the same. On one side, the media bombarded Poplar Fruit with all kinds of interview requests. On the other side, people from the entertainment industry also came to join in the fun. Many mediocre agencies waved money and rushed to the door, wanted to sign Poplar Fruit. Many variety shows also sent Poplar Fruit invitations. Most of the interviews were under the protection of Chun Zongdai, so they didn't disturb Poplar Fruit. Only some big media companies that he couldn't refuse, Poplar Fruit took some time to chat with them. This was one of the few opportunities for the onlookers to see Poplar Fruit respond directly. As for those agencies, Poplar Fruit directly told the security guards in the residential area to keep them out. Not a single one was allowed to come in and disturb him. Fortunately, it was a luxurious residential area. The people who lived here were all rich people, so the security guards didn't dare to neglect them. If it was still the teacher's apartment on campus, Poplar Fruit would definitely be annoyed. Poplar Fruit also turned down the invitations to variety shows, including Mr. He's invitation to go to the Happy Base Camp again. Poplar Fruit didn't agree either. He was busy. He rushed back to teach the students, and he had to translate Meng Luo's novel in a foreign language. More importantly, he was about to finish the topic of his new Chinese learning method, the word-splitting method. This was a topic that even Chun Zongdai was excited about. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to think about other things. Don't forget, he still had to go to Sweden at the end of November and the beginning of December. Chun Zongdai gave him a strict order. I gave you a break before, but you still can't stop playing? Hurry up and write the thesis for me. Don't drag it out until December. Let's strive for a grand finale this year. Poplar Fruit had 3 classes every week. In the past, there were already quite a number of students who attended. Now that he had become famous again, All the teachers and students in the school knew that the best Swedish master and great translator in the country was teaching in their school and had even started a class. Hence, they all rushed over to listen to his class. The reason why double quotes are used here is because these are all titles given by the media. Poplar Fruit is not a recognized master. All of a sudden, the students listening in on the side squeezed out the real students so much that they couldn't even enter the classroom. Poplar Fruit hurriedly informed the school to change the classroom into a large classroom that could accommodate 160 people. However, it was just enough. The classroom was full, and there was still a group of people standing at the back or sitting on the floor in the classroom corridor. Someone took a picture of this situation and uploaded it to the internet. Later on, it was quoted and hyped up by some media outlets. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't care. He still taught seriously for the sake of the students who were listening attentively. The reason why he said this was because many students, especially the female students, came to see people and not to listen to the class. However, the atmosphere in the class was good. Poplar Fruit was still teaching the basics. Hence, some of the basic pronunciation exercises could be done by more than 200 people after Poplar Fruit patiently explained and guided. It was a spectacular scene. He didn't know how long this popularity would last, but Poplar Fruit hoped that it would continue. After all, there were too few people who learned other languages in the country. Swedish was a language that most people wouldn't be able to use in their lifetime. To put it bluntly, there was no point in learning it professionally. However, if it was a minor or a second major, in addition to mastering English, learning Swedish could be the key to a person's success. Of course, it wasn't just Swedish. It was the same for other languages. The reason why Poplar Fruit only taught Swedish now was that he was now famous for it. In fact, the school neglected that Poplar Fruit knew many other languages, including Persian, Hebrew, Finnish, and even Tibetan, which he had recently started to learn. It was mentioned that Poplar Fruit had started to translate Monroe's works. However, before this, Poplar Fruit had already translated several of Monroe's short story collections into Chinese. Now, because Monroe had won the Nobel Prize, the foreign language copyright of her books had fallen into the hands of New Translation Road Publishing House. However, it was precisely because the previous bet was too unreliable that Poplar Fruit didn't take the foreign language copyright seriously. They were afraid that it would never reach their hands, so the foreign language translation had not started yet. According to the results of the emergency meeting between Zheng Yujie, Peng Yu, and Poplar Fruit, they would first release the Chinese translation of Monroe's novels. Then, according to Poplar Fruit's translation progress, they would release the foreign language translation alternately. This would maximize the use of resources. Poplar Fruit's translation of online novels had come to an end. Fortunately, there were still more than 60 excellent translators working on the novel translation, so the New Translation Road's contributions were still abundant. Poplar Fruit would continue to cultivate new talents in the school and Shinda to meet the growing demand of the foreign market. Of course, Poplar Fruit was being used like a scalper. He only needed 3 hours of sleep at night, so he had a lot of time to farm. Oh, no work. The domestic readers were happy because they could now buy this year's Nobel Prize-winning books on Amazon. Some of them had been released before. All of them were young, English translations. It could be said that they moved the heavens and the earth. Through reading Poplar Fruit's translation, they began to understand why Poplar Fruit was famous. Compared to those shoddy translations, Poplar Fruit's translation was really a work of conscience. Not only did it not feel out of place in the language, but one could also feel the unique writing rhythm and charm of the original author. On the side of New Translation Road, with the help of 2 Nobel Prize-winning works, it could be said to be developing rapidly. Recently, its name had been frequently appearing in the newspapers. According to Zheng Yujie, many authors of good quality had submitted to New Translation Road. It was very hopeful that they could change the situation of content production relying on the marketing department to buy. In addition, the negotiations with Tung Sun had been in a deadlock. This was because Tung Sun Literature, which was not short of money, hoped to acquire New Translation Road to expand its sales channels overseas. Zheng Yujie was not short of money at New Translation Road, and she had her own company. Naturally, she did not want to be taken over by others. However, after Poplar Fruit returned this time, Tongsun Literature finally reached a cooperative relationship with New Translation Road. Both parties, Tongsun Literature's subsidiary company and New Translation Road, exchanged shares. New Translation Road and the other party exchanged 15% of their shares. Zheng Yujie used her own shares, including the shares that were distributed to Xinda and Pengyu. Zheng Yujie only had 50% of the shares left. This was only the controlling shares, which was a very dangerous limit. Tongsun Literature also gave us the original shares. No matter how you look at it, we didn't lose out. We even made a small profit. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted Zheng Yujie. I still have 20% here. Why don't you take it back? It'll be safer. It was really not a loss. Although Tongsun Literature had just been established for less than a year, its market value was at least 2 billion yuan. It was not worse than New Translation Road. Moreover, in terms of prospects, New Translation Road and Tongsun Literature had huge potential. The original shares exchanged this time could be said to be a win-win situation for both parties. No need. You take it. Zheng Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit and said, I'd rather believe in you than anyone else. You'll be my strongest support, right? Of course. Chapter 1044. Poplar Fruit was not the most popular person in China in October. He was at most a well-known figure. He was more of a legend in the academic and intellectual circles. When it came to the commoners, everyone just laughed happily and said that the handsome young man was quite good. Then, there was nothing else. What really attracted the public's attention was a parent-child program from South Korea that had just been broadcasted in China. Where are we going, Daddy? When Poplar Fruit was still in America, the first episode was officially broadcasted on Friday primetime on October 11th. The first episode attracted the attention of the entire country. Not to mention the star fathers, the 5 children were all very unique. The wind-like girl, the crybaby princess, the cool Brother Stone, the handsome Tian Tian, and the childlike Kimmy captured the hearts of the entire audience, including the hearts of Poplar Fruit's family. Although they did not make it in time for the first episode, Fong Bei, who had been looking forward to it since a long time ago, found a video online and watched it with Poplar Fruit. Then Kiki joined in, and everyone started to watch it from the beginning. Funny, a pronunciation that's between calling and cute. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Daddy, learn from me. Kiki placed her little hand in her father's palm and shook it. She giggled and said, See you. Love you. Poplar Fruit did not follow the script and deliberately misbehaved. It's not see you, it's love you. Chi-Chi was a little confused by her father's words. She couldn't tell the difference herself, so she quickly corrected herself in exasperation. No, it's not love you, it's see you. Let's talk about this first. Poplar Fruit laughed mischievously. I'm not playing with you anymore. The TV is on again. Kiki quickly turned her head back. The camera panned to Kiki's home. After being amused by Kimmy's shyness and cuteness, Poplar Fruit smiled and pointed at the TV. He said to Kiki, Kiki, look, brother Kimmy has to pack his own luggage. The toys you usually play with, you still need Daddy to pack them. Kiki turned her head and covered her father's mouth. She pouted and said, Don't talk. Don't talk when you're watching TV. No way. Chi-Chi was the one who usually talked the most when watching TV. This was definitely an excuse. Poplar Fruit looked at the little fellow's blushing face and laughed. He did not continue to educate her. Poplar Fruit also knew that the child was quite resistant to lecturing. He would find a chance to slowly cultivate her good habits in the future. If he continued to lecture her now, Kiki might not be happy watching TV. Angela, who had been woken up from a deep sleep, wiped her tears and cried like a little kitten. Kiki was a little embarrassed and began to bury her head in her father's arms. What's wrong? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. In fact, he had already guessed the reason. Papa, Kiki, does Kiki cry so badly when she gets up? Kiki asked shyly as she buried herself in her father's arms. The little fellow was growing up now, but there were two things that had not changed. The first was that she liked to be clingy with her father and liked to act like a spoiled child. The second was that she was very grumpy when she got up. Moreover, not only did the latter not lessen, but it also became stronger as she grew older, whether it was in the morning or at noon. As long as Kiki was woken up before she had enough sleep, she would definitely cry for a while. With her father around, she would recover faster. Without her father around, even Fong Bei would have to spend more than 10 minutes coaxing her. It seemed that Angela's behavior made Kiki think of herself, and she began to feel shy. However, shyness was one thing. After a while, she would forget about it. It was estimated that she would still cry when she woke up next time. No, it's not exactly the same, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. However, he changed the topic and said, if you eat a little more, then you will be as ugly. Ugly was just an exaggeration. How could a child be ugly? A weeping beauty was even more lovable. However, hearing her father's words, Kiki became even more shy. She moaned and buried herself in her father's arms, unwilling to move. When they arrived at Sister Cindy's place, Kiki heard her father and mother say that Sister Cindy was beautiful. Only then did she sneak out to look at the TV. Then, she raised her head and pouted at her father, looking jealous. Poplar Fruit noticed it. He smiled and touched Kiki's little face, saying, "What's wrong?" Papa said that Kiki is not beautiful. Kiki said thoughtfully. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei looked at each other and laughed. He pinched Kiki's little nose and said with a smile, "How could it be? Our Kiki is the most beautiful. The most beautiful Princess Kiki in the world is in our house." At this moment, Kiki was beaming with joy. She held her father and turned back to watch TV. "Papa, why is Sister Cindy sleeping alone? Isn't she afraid?" Kiki asked curiously. Well, here came the opportunity to preach. This was what Kiki had proposed. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "What's there to be afraid of? Papa and Mama are in the next room. Don't you also have your own room? But you don't want to sleep alone." "But I want to sleep with Papa." Kiki hugged her father and said reluctantly, "Kiki doesn't want to leave Papa." What a soft and pleasant voice. It was precisely his daughter's coquetry that Poplar Fruit couldn't refuse. Instead, he flinched first. He hugged his daughter and said with a smile, "Well, we'll talk about it when you want to be alone in a room. You have no idea." Fong Bei patted Poplar Fruit with a smile. It could be said that this episode was very interesting. There were many scenes that made Poplar Fruit, Fong Bei, and Kiki feel emotional and moved. For example, Xiao Ji and Kimmy, who was crying, hugged each other in the shabby spider room that the crew made as a spoof. For example, the children were reluctant to part with their father and even cried when they were separated from their father to do a task. And for example, the girl Cindy, who was as energetic as the wind when she was doing a task. In the first episode of the show, Chi-Chi liked Kimmy the most. She was attracted by the way he addressed Xiao Ji as Daddy. After watching the entire show for 2 hours, she was like a repeater. She imitated Kimmy and called Yonggwa Daddy. She didn't get tired of it. However, after watching for a while, she changed back. "Papa, Gulu Gulu, why don't you call me Daddy?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. He was brushing his teeth. On the other side, Fong Bei applied toothpaste on Kiki's teeth and then handed the toothbrush to Kiki. Kiki waved the toothbrush and giggled. Because Daddy sounded like Kiki's doll. Poplar Fruit was instantly shocked, and Fong Bei was shaking with laughter. After thinking it through, it turned out that Kiki was talking about her Barbie doll. "Papa sounds better," Kiki commented seriously, and Poplar Fruit nodded affirmatively. Chapter 1045. The second episode came quickly, and Poplar Fruit and the others could finally catch up with the live broadcast. However, because the live broadcast was at 10 o'clock in the evening, it was an awkward time. Kiki had already fallen asleep, but she still wanted to watch it with her father. Therefore, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei decided to give up watching the live broadcast. Instead, they chose to watch the live broadcast with Kiki at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the first day of the weekend. Originally, they wanted to lie to Kiki that it was a live broadcast, but Kiki, who was already literate and had sharp eyes, saw the two white characters replayed in the upper left corner of the TV at a glance. Papa is lying. Woo-woo, Kiki didn't watch the live broadcast. Kiki pouted her small mouth. She was still a little angry when she woke up at noon, so she cried unwillingly. Of course, it was just thunder but rain, and she didn't cry out tears. Fong Bei hugged her and comforted her with a smile. Yesterday's live broadcast started too late. Kiki was going to sleep. We're watching the live broadcast now, but it is also a live broadcast, isn't it? But Papa and Ma have already watched it. I won't watch it with Kiki, Kiki said aggrievedly. The little girl felt abandoned by the big team. It turned out that this was what she cared about. No way. Papa and Mama didn't watch it at all. We just watched it with Kiki. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Papa can swear to you that we absolutely didn't peek. You don't know how hard we waited until we could watch it with Kiki. Really? Kiki said hesitantly. Well, Kiki forgives you. In the new episode, Kiki liked Kimmy as always. However, for some reason, Kiki and Zhang Liang's family were at odds. I heard that Zhang Liang was a model. Fong Bei shared with Poplar Fruit as she watched TV and browsed Weibo. That's right. He's still considered my senior. Poplar Fruit smiled. Poplar Fruit was well aware of this. Last year, when he appeared at the Bali Fashion Week and achieved great success, the domestic media compared him to Zhang Liang. It's not easy for Zhang Liang. He started working when he was 16 years old. He went from being a professional chef to a car salesman and then self-taught himself to become a model. In comparison, his path was more difficult, but he was also grounded and walked step by step. It wasn't easy. Poplar Fruit used two words to describe the other party. However, his evaluation was a bit interesting. He didn't put himself in the modeling industry at all. Instead, he praised Zhang Liang objectively. Poplar Fruit chatted happily with Fong Bei. He said, first, he made a name for himself in China. Then, he went to Nihon, Big Apple, and other international metropolises. He was invited by these big fashion weeks. Then, he participated in the Bali Fashion Week. He participated in the Spring-Summer Fashion Week of 2010. Then, he appeared in Milan Fashion Week 2 years ago. He was the first Chinese model to appear in the Milan Fashion Week. Very impressive. Fong Bei looked at him strangely and smiled. Uncle, you're the one who's impressive? Okay. Look, someone on Weibo said that if you continue to do this, it's not a problem for you to play in the 4 major fashion weeks. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled casually. There's nothing to compare. I'm not a professional model. We're just playing around. What's more, Zhang Liang is at the level of a mountain cyclops. His success is a milestone in the domestic modeling industry. He's better than me in this aspect. Of course not. I think you're the best, Uncle. Fong Bei said, unconvinced. That's right. Chi chimed in. She was also particularly unhappy as she said, Papa is the best. Tianqian's Papa is not as good as Kiki's Papa. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really didn't know whether to feel gratified or to persuade them not to make a fuss. After a while, it was time for the fathers to prepare lunch for the children. The clumsy performance of the fathers made Kiki, Poplar Fruit, and Fong Bei laugh. Especially the otherworldly Director Wang. After repeatedly mixing water and flour, the action of mixing the dough and patting it gently, it was simply too horrible to watch. However, when the scene of Zhang Liang chopping vegetables and meat with 2 kitchen knives appeared, all the audience, including Poplar Fruit's, eyes lit up. His knife skills are pretty good, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Other people, I can't wait to be their helper. Compared to other fathers who didn't know where to start, such as Tian Liang, Zhang Liang's knife skills were indeed decent. Listening to the rhythm of the knife made Poplar Fruit feel a little more comfortable. After all, he used to be a professional chef. Poplar Fruit had a good impression of Zhang Liang, who was good at cooking and had a model background. He was happy to see the same kind of person. He couldn't help but praise. Not bad, not bad. He must be the best among all the fathers. Kiki was immediately unhappy. She immediately got up from the side, supported her belly with two hands, and said unconvinced, "Who said that Papa is the best among all the fathers? Kiki's Papa is the best." Poplar Fruit found that Kiki was unhappy because he failed. Poplar Fruit laughed and teased his daughter. "What do you mean by Kiki's Papa is the best? Do you want to eat Papa?" Kiki didn't mean to joke with her father. Her little face was tense, and she explained very seriously, "No, Kiki is talking about cooking. Papa is the best cook, not Chin-Chin's Papa." Of course, Poplar Fruit took his daughter and kissed her lovingly. He said, "Papa also knows that Papa is the best cook, but Papa just said that the best cook among the five fathers on TV should be Uncle Zhang Liang. It could also be Kimmy's daddy." Kiki pouted and was unhappy. Kimmy and her father were Kiki's favorite. Uncle Xiao Ji is also very good. He can even drive a car. The topic was a little off topic, but Poplar Fruit liked Kiki's childish words. They watched TV with her and talked about all kinds of things. In fact, there was a girl at home who was also a childish girl. Fong Bei had been secretly laughing. When Poplar Fruit and Kiki's conversation came to an end, she secretly came over and whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear, "Don't always praise Zhang Liang. Fortunately, there are no outsiders listening, or people will say that you like Zhang Liang." "I'm not gay." Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Bei and laughed. "Bah, bah, bah. A child's words are not harmful." "Really?" Fong Bei laughed and continued to tease Poplar Fruit. "Some people on Weibo think that the two of you are a good match. Both of you are tall and handsome." Chapter 1046. Where Are We Going, Daddy? Was definitely a national-level variety show. After only 2 episodes, Yanghua discovered that the whole world was discussing the 5 children in the show. There was no need to mention Chi-Chi and Fong Bei at home. Both of them were loyal fans of the show. Poplar Fruit could hear the students talking about Kimmy and Cindy during the break. When she went to the market to buy groceries, Yanghua could still hear these familiar names, and it was the gossip of the aunties and merchants. The weekend passed. It was a new week. Although there were no classes, Yanghua still went to school. He wanted to find Chun Zongdai to hand in his thesis and report on his recent studies. He met a few teachers from the student office in the outer court building. They stopped Poplar Fruit with a smile. "Poplar Fruit, did you see where Daddy went?" Because they were all young people, and Yanghua was a few years younger, the teachers didn't hold back with him and asked him questions with a smile. "How could I not see it?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "You don't know, but my family is looking forward to watching this show every weekend." "Hey, Poplar Fruit, I think you should take Kiki on this show." A student assistant came over and laughed. "We are all fans of Kiki. If Kiki can appear on TV, we will be crazy with joy. How could the show invite us?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "Didn't you see that these guests are all big stars? How could I be qualified?" "How could you not be qualified?" The student assistant retorted excitedly. "Poplar Fruit, you are also a big star. Zhang Liang, an unknown model, can be on the show. You are so famous that you have been on the news several times. How could you not be qualified?" This girl was probably a true fan of Poplar Fruit and Kiki. Otherwise, she would not know about Poplar Fruit so well. Poplar Fruit waved his hand embarrassedly and said, "Thank you for your love, but Kiki is still too young. She is only 2.5 years old. Didn't you see the news? They want a child above 4 years old, not too young." "Only 2.5 years old?" the teachers exclaimed. "Look at Kiki's height. She is more than 2.5 years old." A teacher who didn't quite understand laughed and said, "Hey, don't you guys look at Yanghua. She's so tall. How can her child not be tall? Didn't the news say that Yao Ming's daughter was 1 meter tall when she was born?" This was definitely a rumor. However, Kiki was indeed taller than her peers. "My daughter, who is 3 years old, was not even 1 meter tall. Kiki was already 1 meter tall, which was about the same height as my daughter, who was 5 years old." Poplar Fruit was too embarrassed to discuss this issue with the other party. After a few perfunctory words, he left the student office and went to the dean's office. Teacher. After knocking on the door and getting a response, Poplar Fruit walked in. Chunzongdai was there reading with reading glasses. Come sit. Chunzongdai seemed to be in a good mood today. He was smiling so brightly that the wrinkles on his face were almost gone. Chunzongdai had already finished reading the thesis. Nowadays, students still submitted their theses in paper form. However, for Poplar Fruit and Chunzongdai, the electronic version was definitely more suitable. They would have to submit it in the future. As for the paper version, Chunzongdai could not wait and printed it out himself. Chunzongdai was already numb with excitement about the results of this research project. For the past year, Chunzongdai had been following and guiding Poplar Fruit's research project. Chunzongdai had carefully read every stage of the report. There were a few times when he almost corrected Poplar Fruit's thesis. However, when he saw Poplar Fruit's thick stack of nearly 300,000 words, which could almost be published as a book, this did not include some of the arguments that were cut. If they were added, it would definitely be enough to publish a book. Chunzongdai was still as happy as a child. After calming down, Chunzongdai told Poplar Fruit about his arrangements. This weekend, I didn't do anything other than review your thesis twice. Chunzongdai said, there are no small problems. I am very happy to see that you can write a thesis with such rigor. Thank you, teacher. Poplar Fruit stood up and bowed gratefully. It was indeed worthy of a bow. One had to know that Chunzongdai did not just read it twice. He pondered over the nearly 300,000-word thesis word by word, and even read it twice. The energy he spent on this was not something an ordinary person could imagine. Don't thank me. This is the result of your own hard work, Chunzongdai said with relief. After this thesis is published, Poplar Fruit, you can graduate. It can be said that in the future, no one will dare to question your ability and qualifications. That's all because you taught me well, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Even if I graduate, what's the difference? Am I not your student anymore? That's true, Chunzongdai said with a smile. But with this thesis as support, with such a high-value PhD thesis, who would dare to question me when I let you graduate next year? Poplar Fruit asked with a bit of surprise. So fast? That's not good, right? After all, next summer, he would only have 2 years of master's and PhD. It was really fast. Let's not talk about this for now. The operation depends on the reaction of your thesis, Chunzongdai said with a wave of his hand. Didn't I ask you to prepare a Chinese and English version for this thesis? Chunzongdai asked. Poplar Fruit nodded. In fact, their level of thesis was generally published in both Chinese and English. For example, the thesis that Poplar Fruit had previously published in Translator Genius was written in both Chinese and English. It was just that the journal published it in Chinese. This time, the English version should come in handy. Chunzongdai said with a smile, do you still remember the language_learning journal published by Harvard University and Monterey University? I'll give you an email address later. You can submit it to them according to the format. How could Poplar Fruit not remember? This journal was one of the most authoritative journals in the field of Western linguistics. Poplar Fruit could be said to read every issue. Otherwise, he would not be able to keep up with the trend of world language research. This time, it was actually his turn to submit a thesis. Language_learning? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. This journal is the most difficult to get published in. Not to mention Poplar Fruit. Even Chunzongdai's thesis might not be published in this authoritative journal. Moreover, it was a monthly journal. In a year, the number of domestic theses published in this journal could be counted on one hand. I know. I have to try to know if it will work, Chunzongdai said with high fighting spirit. The quality of your thesis is very, very high. I believe that as long as they are not blind, they will definitely take it seriously. Chapter 10:47. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of October. There was a very interesting festival at the end of this month. Although it came from the West, it was still very popular in the school. Especially in Poplar Fruit's foreign languages school, There were many blonde foreign teachers who wanted to bring the festival atmosphere to everyone. Therefore, Poplar Fruit received an invitation from the student union to the Halloween costume party. It was said that it was a serious carnival, and even the dean, Chun Zongdai, would attend. Then, there would be programs suitable for children. Do you want to go together? Back home, Poplar Fruit smiled and asked Kiki and Fong Beibei, Kiki, do you still remember the Halloween that Dad told you about? Yes. Trick_underscore treat. Kiki's big eyes sparkled as she remembered the story her dad told her. She asked happily, can Kiki follow my brothers and sisters to knock on the door and ask for candy? They will go. You can play with them, but you can't knock on the door because it's in the sports hall. Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter's excited expression and smiled. Then you can go from stall to stall to stall to stall to ask for candy. Candy, delicious candy. Before she decided to go, Kiki was already fascinated, as if there was a sea of candy in front of her. Kiki was happy, while Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei began to think about what to wear on Halloween. But it didn't matter. As long as the idea was good, it was easy to ask someone to make the costumes. On Halloween, Poplar Fruit's iconic Land Rover slowly stopped near the sports hall. At that time, many students were walking on the school road in all kinds of strange costumes, and there were many people standing at the entrance of the sports hall. In addition to the foreign languages school, there were many students from other schools who came. Don't underestimate the creativity of the students. Many of the students were cosplay enthusiasts. Their various magical costumes made Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei marvel. Naruto, Black Deacon, Attack on Titan, The Mysterious Assassin's Creed, Prince Arthas who was holding Frostmourne, the red-haired Katarina, Batman, Black Widow, Captain America. From the first dimension to the second dimension, and then to the electronic world, Poplar Fruit could not help but be amazed by the all-inclusive nature of this costume party. Of course, Poplar Fruit guessed that the organizers, the Student Union of the School of Foreign Languages, would not have expected the participating students to display such a rare display of craziness. Wait, what was that green-faced Fang thing? He even pasted a talisman on his face and wore a Qing Dynasty official's uniform as he skipped past our car. He had really transmigrated today. Even the classic zombies from the 1980s Hong Kong movies jumped out. Poplar Fruit sighed with emotion to Fong Beibei while covering Kiki's eyes. It's not good to scare the little girl. After parking the car, Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei with a tragic look and said, Baby, it's our turn. Ha, come on. Fong Beibei waved her hand majestically and said with a smile. In fact, when Poplar Fruit's car drove over, some student from the outer courtyard recognized it. They all looked over and were curious about how their idol would appear. The driver's door was opened first. A black-haired monk wearing a kasaya and Buddhist beads walked out. Immediately, there was a burst of laughter around him. Poplar Fruit was dressed like a monk. In his hand was a bowl that seemed to be made of copper. Even the shoes on his feet were the linen Arhut shoes worn by monks. What is this? Tang Seng from the Western Paradise? Don't I look good? Poplar Fruit looked at the strange eyes of the students, some of whom were students from his class, and asked with a smile. Yes, you look handsome in anything. The students flattered while holding back their laughter. However, everyone could hear the hypocrisy in this flattery. Poplar Fruit ran over and helped Fong Beibei open the car door. As a result, everyone saw that the person who got out of the car was an elegant young master in a square turban. However, this young master had a beautiful face and a graceful figure. There was a hint of naughty cuteness in his chic. Oh, the surrounding students couldn't help but exclaim. When they saw Fong Beibei, both girls and boys had a feeling of clarity. However, at this moment, someone had already shouted out Poplar Fruit's cosplay character. Poplar Fruit's teacher is F.A. Hai, and his wife is Su Xian. Indeed, Poplar Fruit wanted to carry out the cosplay to the end. However, it wasn't over yet. Kiki hadn't come down yet. As everyone expected, a small figure got out of the car and suddenly stunned the audience. It was a fluttering white robe that was whiter than the winter snow, and a pretty face that was as bright as the moon. Chi-Chi's clean and elegant fairy attire made her already beautiful face appear even more delicate and otherworldly. Moreover, her bright eyes, snow-white skin, and her sweet smile when her father held her hand made her look like an otherworldly fairy from myths and legends. Although she played the role of White Snake, who cultivated to become an immortal, people felt that White Snake wasn't as beautiful as our Kiki. Immediately, many students took out their mobile phones to take photos. These photos were posted on the internet. There would definitely be a lot of Kiki's fans who would go crazy. Don't be in a hurry to take photos. Let's go in first. It's about to start. Let's go in and take photos together, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Teacher Poplar Fruit, did your family change their characters? White Snake practicing her skills, and Su Xian fighting the bad guy, Fa Hai. A female student who often followed them asked with a smile. That's not necessarily true. Why can't it be that Fa Hai and Su Xian fell in love, and because of their love, they gave birth to Little White Snake, and one day Little White Snake cultivated to become an immortal? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. The students were suddenly shocked. At this time, they realized that Poplar Fruit wasn't those rigid old pedants. Poplar Fruit, who was only a few years older than them, was also their peer. After taking photos with some students, Kiki, the little fairy white snake, finally found her group. She met up with the brothers and sisters of Grandpa Chen's family. This costume-changing party was a combination of a party and a carnival. In addition to some prepared singing and dancing performances, there were also various fun booths around the gymnasium designed by the students. Chen Zhongdai came, but after he said a congratulatory speech, he quickly left. He didn't want to disturb the mood of the students. However, Poplar Fruit stayed. He seemed to have returned to the happy time 3 or 4 years ago when he was still an undergraduate student. He pulled Fong Beibei's hand and happily played with her from booth to booth. Kiki and the other children didn't have any interest in costume, changing, or playing games. They came to this party for the candy. Trick_core treat. A mighty group of child soldiers, using childish English, swept all the booths. The enthusiastic students naturally wouldn't treat the children unfairly. They had already prepared candy for them. After sweeping the booths, it was time to share the spoils and enjoy. Kiki, I like to eat soft candy. I'll give you one, and you give me a big white rabbit, okay? Okay. The adults had their own happiness, and the children also had their own happiness. Halloween. How nice would it be if every day was Halloween? Kiki and the other children naively thought. Chapter 1048. It was Poplar Fruit's birthday in November. Fong Beibei had secretly planned with Kiki for a long time, wanting to give Poplar Fruit a birthday surprise. However, on Poplar Fruit's birthday, it was destined not to be happy. Because on the eve of his birthday, the biggest crisis of trust since he became famous suddenly broke out. Several large publishing groups, led by Dongxin Publishing, began to question and bombard New Translation Road Publishing House and Poplar Fruit through major print media. It's impossible for a new publishing house to reach the performance level of more than 1 billion in annual revenue. There is a mastermind behind New Translation Road Publishing House controlling everything. New Translation Road Publishing House is definitely involved in data fraud. It may have become a channel for criminal groups to launder money. Malicious speculations have shown their sharpness. What made them decide to shed all pretenses of cordiality and start to attack New Translation Road was the latest 1-year anniversary financial report released by New Translation Road. However, New Translation Road was not the only target. Poplar Fruit was the target. They concentrated their firepower on bombarding with public opinion. Poplar Fruit is just a puppet they push to the front stage. A despicable and clumsy star creation plan deceived the good people of the country, but it can't deceive our peers who are familiar with literary translation. Whether Poplar Fruit has the ability or not is another matter, but he is definitely not as open and above board as you think. He is definitely not as outstanding as you think. His so-called results are just plagiarism. In other words, there is a huge team behind him supporting him. Such arguments, from the print media to the internet, shocked countless onlookers. Although Poplar Fruit's fans fought back, it seemed that more people had already believed it, because they had to believe it. Translator, Lu_Kaishian translator, Kaishian editor, Valvrave translator, Valvrave editor, Valvrave translator, Valvrave editor, Valvrave translator, Valvrave editor, Valvrave. However, the data showed how much Poplar Fruit had translated alone, not to mention before, in the year of New Translation Road. He had translated and published more than 50 books. Was he a god? Even the most loyal fans of Poplar Fruit were dumbfounded when they saw this number. They had no choice but to believe that there was a conspiracy behind this. Did they make a mistake with our Appa's data? A female fan questioned. However, according to the screenshots posted by Dongshin's official Weibo, Poplar Fruit's name was listed under more than 50 books. Why are you playing with me like this? There were already some irrational onlookers who were fiercely attacking Poplar Fruit. They shouted, "It's a disgrace to use you as a role model to encourage our children." The eruption of this incident should have been a premeditated action by Dongshin Publishing House and some other publishing houses who had long been jealous of a New Translation Road. They suddenly took it out this month and attacked so fiercely that even Zheng Yujia and Pang Yu were caught off guard. As a result, even after the other party started to take action, New Translation Road still couldn't come up with any response. This led to a lot of scolding on the internet. In real life, some students in the school also began to point fingers at Yonghua. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was slightly warmed by the students in his class, or the students who had come to his class because of his reputation. Only those who had really come in contact with Poplar Fruit could clearly feel the excellence of Poplar Fruit. Get out of here if you look down on our teacher. Open your eyes and see the truth. However, such support and counterattack were too weak and soon drowned in the sea of people. After an emergency discussion with the senior management of New Translation Road, they decided to hold a press conference in Beijing tomorrow to clarify all the rumors. Tomorrow was Poplar Fruit's birthday. Poplar Fruit went home to pack his luggage and held Fong Beibei in his arms with an apologetic look. He knew that the two girls he loved most at home had always wanted to celebrate his birthday with him. Can't you do it one day later? Why did you pick such an important day like tomorrow? Fong Beibei pouted and was a little unhappy. In fact, she was also reasonable and would not stop Poplar Fruit, but it was normal to have resentment in her heart. They didn't deliberately pick the day of my birthday. The main thing is that this happened too quickly. It just came out yesterday, and we didn't have time to react. Poplar Fruit explained and comforted her. "Baby, I know you have worked hard. What should we do?" Fong Beibei calmed down and asked. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Wait for me to come back. I'm not in a hurry to celebrate my birthday this year. I'm waiting to come back and celebrate it with you. So you have to prepare well at home. Tomorrow's birthday is just a concept of time. As long as we like, we can move it to any time, right?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "All right, I got it." Fong Beibei smiled and patted Poplar Fruit's chest. She waved her hand at him and said, "When you go to Beijing, you must do your best and slap them." "Humph! How dare they bully our uncle?" "Of course." Poplar Fruit pointed his sword to the east and said domineeringly, "Your boyfriend is now a professional rumor handler. If there is anyone who is unconvinced, I will deal with it." Of course, Poplar Fruit was only trying to make his girlfriend happy. When it was time to leave, Fong Beibei drove Poplar Fruit to the airport. This time, she finally got her driver's license. However, Poplar Fruit did not have time to buy a new car, so she had been practicing with the Land Rover. Not daring to let her drive back alone, Poplar Fruit called Song Jiwen to guide her on the way back. "Sister Yujia, Poplar Fruit is in Beijing. I'll have to trouble you to take care of him." Fong Beibei smiled and said to Zheng Yujia. Zheng Yujia, who was wearing a tight black leather jacket, still had a cool expression. She snorted and said, "Don't worry, Beijing is my territory. Of course, I won't play any tricks. I will beat you fair and square." Zheng Yujia did not say it, but Fong Beibei could feel the sharp gaze hidden behind the sunglasses. "Papa, come back early. Kiki wants to see where Papa is going with Papa." Kiki said reluctantly. So Kiki just wants to see where Papa is going with Papa? Is there nothing else? Poplar Fruit pretended to be sad and asked, Kiki, of course there's also Papa's birthday. Kiki mischievously twisted her small waist and laughed. Come, tell Papa secretly. What surprise did Kiki and Mama prepare for Papa? Poplar Fruit asked seductively. Come, come. Kiki secretly glanced at Fong Bei and waved to her father. Poplar Fruit lowered his head, and the little fellow came up and whispered, Kiki and Mama Ma are ready. After that, Poplar Fruit could not hear anything, because Kiki actually covered his ears with her hands, blocking out the sound. Fong Bei, who had been paying attention to the side, could not help but burst out laughing. Aya, Papa has no idea what you're talking about, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Kiki proudly jumped back in her mother's arms, made a face at her father, and said with a smile, I won't tell Papa. I won't tell. This is a surprise. Well, Papa is waiting for your surprise. Poplar Fruit smiled, kissed his daughter and Fong Bei on the cheek, and then walked to the ticket gate with Zheng Yujia. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.